Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
We will be talking about passports. Finally, we get to the end game. This is all that's left. Grimsby, of course, home of the British fishing fleet, or one of them, has already begged Westminster for an exemption from withdrawal from single market rules, so you can't have fish anymore. Regular listeners to this programme will know that very slowly, over the course of the last 12 months, we've whittled down the dream for what was plausible, deliverable and likely to what actually Brexit was going to really mean. And now we know. Blue passports. Oh, my days. I don't know how to do this this morning because I want to start the Christmas armistice with regard to Brexit. I've had more emails about that. We didn't even do it as a proper topic, I don't think, in the end. It was more of a passing comment, but I've had more emails about that than anything else this year except Grenfell Tower. The suggestion that just for the purposes of Christmas, we should stop talking about Brexit. Otherwise, we might stop braining each other with turkey drumsticks. And I mentioned that my dad won't be here at Christmas, like a lot of people. There'll be someone missing from the table. And that kind of puts in perspective almost everything. So I leave you with that poignant thought. But I don't know how to have this conversation about passports because there's... I'm really sad. For the record, I couldn't care less what colour my passport is. I really couldn't. But then again, I don't care what colour you are. All I care about is what is underneath your bonnet, what kind of person you are. I judge you by your record, your character, your behaviour, your morality, your honesty, your decency. I couldn't give a monkey's what colour your skin is. And the same with the passport. I judge the power of a passport by the number of countries into which it can allow me travel without visas or without complications or applications. For me, it's the protection offered up by an embassy. At the moment, my passport offers up the protection potentially of 28 embassies in foreign countries. When the new one comes in, it will be one. And yet, I because I am kind of dedicated to the belief that people are fundamentally good and they get turned bad by outside influences. Joseph Pulitzer, of course, described demagogic and mercenary media as ultimately creating a population as base as itself, and that is where I think Britain is at the moment. So I don't know how to do this one today, because if you really do care, if you are somehow delighted today that you're going to be able to get a passport that's the same colour as a Croatian one, I find you simultaneously ridiculous and sad. But I don't understand you, and I don't know whether today's a day for trying to understand you. I'm going to call a truce on the kind of normal way of doing things. It's our last morning together before Christmas. But I still, even after a year, I just don't get it. What is it that these people feel in their heart at the prospect of having a less powerful passport that's a different colour, and somehow the changing colour is more important than the power that the passport possesses? Sometimes I'm so, maybe it's cocky, but if I say that out loud, how can anybody listening to this programme still think that it's news? Imagine being the London correspondent of a major German newspaper, right? Yesterday, I don't know how much attention you paid to it. These weird documents were published claiming to be some form of a sectoral analysis. You know, it contained comments like fishing fleets are usually found near the coast. Electricity is very important. Airbus make planes. I swear to you, these are all actually contained within these documents, which are sub-GCSE cut and paste. Something very odd is going on in the department for exiting the European Union. Something very, very odd. But weirdly, we just don't care. And if you were the London correspondent of a German newspaper today, you'd have to be explaining to your news editor what the biggest story in Britain was, according to the front page of The Sun and the top of our bulletins and elsewhere as well. I think it was leading the Beeb, too. What's the biggest story in town today? Well, boss, passports, boss. What? They're not talking about those papers that were published yesterday that essentially prove David Davis thinks he can get away with treating the British public like absolute balloons. They're not fussed about that. What about the warning from Barnier that come March 2019 we're actually going to have renegotiated somewhere in the region of 900 separate agreements in order simply to carry on as we are? No, they're not interested in that, boss. They really care about the passport. And then I've got another problem, because who really does care? Why is this still... You know, that UKIP-y rump of about 15%. Why are their priorities still front and centre? Is it because to have any meaningful, nuanced or intelligent conversation about Brexit now would leave everybody on the Leave side feeling stupid? And so the only conversations we can have are the silly ones, the slogan ones, the soundbite ones. You have a conversation about the economy, you have a conversation about trade, you have a conversation about freedom of movement, you have a conversation about car sales, you have a conversation about inflation, you have a conversation about food prices, you have a conversation about where your children can study, you have a conversation about whether or not your neighbours feel less welcome than they ever have before. Every other conversation you could have is now, it seems to me, absolutely stone-cold proof that we're embarked upon the craziest, stupidest thing this country has ever done. So we can't have those conversations anymore. And if you have them on the BBC, you have to get one person on who describes the truths and the facts that I've just described, and then you have someone else on, sitting on the other side of the table, who says, well, no one's got a crystal ball. We don't know that everything's going to be absolutely awful. There's still a very strong chance that we might not actually go off the edge of a cliff. And you think, imagine if you'd campaigned on that platform. Imagine if you'd campaigned by saying things will probably be worse, but they might not be that much worse, and after 20 years, they might actually get a bit better. Imagine if that was the campaign. That would be the honest campaign. So the Remain side would be, look, things aren't perfect, but here's an idea. Why don't we start taking the European Union really seriously? Why don't we start sending really top-caliber politicians to Strasbourg instead of sort of tin pot loonies and racist liars? Why don't we start sending really decent people to Strasbourg and really getting stuck in to improving a far from perfect institution, which is by far the best available for our country? No. We didn't want to conduct it like that. Yeah, it's flawed, but it's fixable. That would be the Remain campaign, and the Leave campaign would be, in honesty, if they'd been honest at the time, yes, things are going to get a hell of a lot worse, but there's a slim chance they might eventually get better. Vote for me. Stick that on the side of a bloody bus. That's what they're saying now. All of them. So, well, 10 to 15 years. Nobody said that at the time. And the thing that confuses me, in a warm way, because I can't help it. I don't know whether it's because I was raised as a Catholic or whether it's just because I've got dodgy DNA or whatever it might be. I still want to give you a hug if you're sitting there screaming at me. Hey, you just don't understand. The passport will be blue. A passport of purest blue. I still want to give you a bit of a shake and say, come on, it's your kids, it's your grandchildren. You're selling them down the river because of some nonsense about blue passports and fish. Or sovereignty, of course, also a word that is probably used almost exclusively now by people who have no idea what it means. So please, try to tell me. I would love to hit 11 o'clock today feeling at least a degree of camaraderie with you if you are really pleased that you are going to be... You were already allowed to have a blue passport. The government just chose not to. Croatia's got a blue passport. The Democratic Republic of North Korea has a blue passport. Iceland has a blue passport. Switzerland has a bright red one that's rather nice, and they, of course, will retain freedom of movement throughout the whole of the European Union after we've given it up for what? That's always the question, isn't it, at the heart of our time together. What are we getting in return? See, I used to joke fish and passports, but we're not even getting fish. We're getting the passport. That is it, my friends. That's it. That's all they've got left. Some sort of nonsensical, nebulous claims about future trade arrangements, which could never, by definition, be comparable to membership of the largest free market in the world. The Japan trade deal sees 30% of the world's GDP contained within one free market, the one we're leaving. I just can't see what you think sits on the other side of the scales. And I'm not going to stop asking, because the minute people like me stop asking, the next con starts. NHS carved up, flogged off. Welfare state carved up, flogged off. Why? Because somehow the great triumph of the owning classes throughout history has been to persuade ordinary people from the non-owning classes that we are somehow on the same side. And the best way to do that is racism. Always. Always, always, always. Find a common enemy, whether you're talking about 1984 or whether you're talking about fifth columnists and the enemy within. You know, they started chasing down Dutch people after the Great Fire of London because the word went around that it had been started by Dutchmen. There's always, just find me an enemy, and then I can persuade the poor people that we're on the same side. I can do a tax deal that's going to take billionaires and give them the mother of all payoffs, and I can persuade poor people that it's a good idea because I'm also at the same time going to be vile about Mexicans and Muslims. And that's where we are now. What a strange thing we've allowed to happen to our country. What a curious, curious conundrum it is that half of the nation apparently considers a change in the colour of a passport to be not only significant, but also somehow the payoff, the dividend, all of the things that we've lost on one side of the fence, on one side of the scales, and on the other, a blue passport that nobody under the age of 45 ever had in the first place anyway. So none of us are getting it back. The engine room of this country, both economically and socially, my generation and below, we're not getting anything back because we never had it in the first place. Just take a moment and be nice to me to tell me why it really does. Tell me what I'm missing. James, you don't understand. It's blue. It's a passport of purest blue. This is the best thing that's happened to me since sliced bread. Actually, I don't really like sliced bread. I think we should go back to unsliced bread. I believe that civilization began its decline with sliced bread, which was probably invented by an immigrant anyway. What is it that you get? Why would anybody care? On any conceivable day, in any conceivable world. How could you wake up and say, I've got this passport that allows me visa-free travel into 27 countries. I'm giving it up, and I won't have visa-free travel into 27 countries. I don't even know what kind of visa I'm going to need to go to France, potentially. But I'm giving it up because the new one's blue. I've given up on penny drop moments, you know that. The things that I say to you, presuming that 100% of people listening will just go, oh yeah, that is really stupid. It's a bit like having a key that opens 28 doors. That's silver, and you want to swap it for a key that opens no doors at all, but is blue. Or maybe it's not like that at all. Let's find out.
It might take 4 hours to get through customs, but at least our passports will be blue as your mood. So say some of the jokes making the rounds on social media after the government announced the British passport would return to its old dark blue cover when Britain leaves the EU. Is this Brexit's first solid achievement, or an old-fashioned nostalgia for something that isn't actually what it seems? Ed Hauke has been finding out.
How do you define a nation? Is it with national celebrations, iconic landmarks, or with a colour? Today, the Prime Minister took to Twitter to address this question, celebrating her government's decision to change the colour of the British passport from maroon back to blue. The UK passport is an expression of our independence and sovereignty, symbolising our citizenship of a proud great nation. That's why we have announced that the iconic #blue passport will return after we leave the European Union in 2019. The announcement was also welcomed by Brexit supporters, including Nigel Farage, who has long campaigned for the passport colour to change.
I have loathed it for 30 years. I've loathed the fact that in the name of trading freely with our neighbours, we effectively got rid of our national identity. And what's happening here is we're getting it back. So happy Brexmas.
But the passport that appeared on the front page of The Sun today is very different from the old one. It's a different size. It doesn't even mention the word British. And the old passport was rather more black than blue in any case. So it's a different colour.
Every 5 years or so, we do update the passport to make sure we stay ahead of fraudsters and those looking to use forgeries. And the next update is due around late 2019. And that does give us an opportunity, as we've left the European Union by that stage, to look again at how we want our passport to be and what we want it to look like. We thought it's the right time to announce that we are going to return to that classic, almost iconic British blue.
The trouble is, the new passport design issued by the Home Office today, and which appeared on the Prime Minister's own Twitter feed, literally can't be taken at face value. I spoke to the Home Office today, I asked them who designed it, and they said, "We will work with the supplier of the design once they have been chosen." And they described it as a government mock-up.
It was a stunt, nothing more than that. But I think the fundamental issue here is that whether our EU passport was a red, white or blue colour, in fact what we're doing by getting rid of our EU passport is in fact jettisoning many rights that we have, for instance the right to travel, to study and to live freely in the European Union. So there's a real loss attached to this.
And there's a final irony. The EU did not make a binding resolution to force the British passport to be maroon. Croatia, which joined in 2013, continues to issue passports in darkest blue. So the first major victory of Brexit may even have been possible without leaving the European Union.
A passport of purest blue. Sell it to me. Tell me why I should be celebrating today instead of just feeling utterly ambivalent and profoundly baffled by my fellow man. Michael's in Basingstoke. Michael, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Well, hopefully I can give you a reason to celebrate.
Well, we need to sort your phone line out first, Michael. I'll be back in a moment. Ross is in Abu Dhabi. Abu Dhabi has had quite a lot of mentions on the programme this week, Ross.
Oh, has it?
Yes.
Why is that?
Well, because I'm looking for round robins from people, you know, those letters that people send out at Christmas detailing the most banal elements of their last year. And I suggested the best ones are from people who you hardly know. You might have met them on holiday in Abu Dhabi 18 years ago.
Oh, well, probably not. My parents only just moved here.
Small world. What would you like to say? Sell me the blue passport. Tell me why I should be celebrating. Dancing a little jig.
Mr. O'Brien, it's not about the colour of the passport.
You must have misunderstood my question.
Okay, well, it's about the fact, it's more about how it came about that EU passports had to be standardised. Do you know how it came about?
Well, you mean like Croatia?
They will eventually have to fall into line.
When?
Sorry?
When?
I'm not sure when exactly, but I'm sure.
But you know that they definitely will.
I don't know that they will. No, but I'm sure they will because.
Right.
Do you know how it came about?
No, tell me.
The other
Tell
27 members had to have standardised passports.
Yes.
How did it come about?
I don't know, Ross. You're supposed to be telling me.
Oh, sorry. It came about through several council directives. The first beginning in 1974, then again in 1984, when the EU Council simply said that it has to have a uniform passport.
So why doesn't Croatia?
Well, I think I would imagine because it's a recent member state and it's been allowed a grace period.
But you would imagine that, but it's not true. You can imagine whatever you want.
Well, the point is that the EU issued these council directives, and we had to follow them.
We didn't have to.
Well, I think we did.
Well, you think wrong, my friend.
This is the passport of the future, and it's in circulation from today.
When the red EU passport was introduced 30 years ago, Britain agreed to a common standard. It didn't have to accept the colour. Croatia's passport remains blue.
Let's pretend you're right. Let's pretend you're right, and we had to have a burgundy passport. Why does that upset you?
It had to have the words European Union on it. That's what upsets me more.
Yes, but I asked about the burgundy bit.
As with the driving licence. Do you know how that came about?
Ross, you've just proved that your kind of follow-ups to asking me whether I know something don't really leave you looking particularly knowledgeable. So I'm going to absolutely say no, I have no idea how that came about. Please tell me about driving licences as well.
Again, through an EU directive that was
Yes.
transposed into British law by a statutory instrument simply signed by the relevant minister without any debate or act of parliament at all.
Yes,
this
and
is why I voted leave, so we don't have to have any more of these.
To take some words off your driving licence.
Sorry?
You voted leave to take 2 words off your driving licence and your passport.
Simplify it in that ridiculous manner. It's so that we don't have
Tell me
to
again, Ross.
transpose EU directives into British law without any kind of democratic process.
So the cut and pasting of all EU law that the government is to undertake shortly after March 2019 must really infuriate you.
Oh, the manner in which they're going about leaving, I don't like at all. But
No, I bet you don't, because it recognises reality. Just take me back again, and I apologise for oversimplifying things. But in terms of the passport and the driving licence, you voted to take the words European Union off them.
Again, that's a very immature simplification.
Okay.
I voted leave in large part because I don't want more EU directives transposed into British law by statutory instruments to be signed by the relevant minister.
Okay, so give me the things then. Oh, I can't do this anymore. Give me the things that you feel constrained by, or the laws that you don't like, or the things that you're really looking forward not to have to do anymore, Ross.
EU laws that I don't like. Well, where should we begin?
No, the things that you won't have to do anymore after we've left. I apologise if I'm being immature again, but the question seems really easy to understand to me.
Well, if we leave and we actually repeal a number of laws, there's all sorts of things. Take a small one from the EU landfill directive to the fact.
How does that affect you, Ross?
How does it affect how I put my bins out?
Yes, how will a change to the EU landfill directive affect you?
Well, because every week we have to recycle in a certain way, or we have to put food waste.
That's your council. That's not the EU that's doing that. All councils have different bin policies. But anyway, let's pretend you're right, Ross. Tell me how your bins are going to be a brave new world after March 2019.
Again, you're reducing it to the...
No, Ross, I'm taking what you give me, mate. I asked for something, you said bins, and now you're embarrassed that we're talking about bins, but it was you that wanted to talk about bins.
Well, it's simply an example of how the EU has extended its control over every...
And that's the best you've got, you think? So tell me what you're going to be able to do with your bins after we've left, Ross.
Well, it depends what the government decides.
What do you dream of? Tell me about your bin-based dream.
Decide whatever it wants,
yes.
Because it no longer has to follow an EU directive that was signed into British law by the relevant minister.
Okay, again, I'm sorry for being immature and simplistic, but just describe your bin-based dream to me. What is the future of bins in Abu Dhabi that makes you sort of glow with patriotic pride?
That's not what makes me... That's again, very immature. What makes me not glow with patriotic pride...
What are you looking forward to? I want to join you in this brave new bin-based future. What will I be able to do after leaving that I can't do now with my rubbish?
Well, again, it depends what the government...
Just tell me, Ross, please. What do you want the government to do? What is your bin-based Brexit bonanza?
What I want is that this government makes its own laws and that it doesn't have to transpose EU directives.
Statutory instruments. Yes, I know what you're reading from, but again, last chance. Bins. What does the future look like?
I don't know, because it's what the government decides. It will decide what it wants.
25 minutes after 10. Michael's in Basingstoke. Is it going to be one of those days, Michael?
I think it might be, James.
Go on. What do you want bins? What do you want bins to do in the future?
Well, I'd like them to empty themselves. That'd be quite nice.
There you go. Why couldn't you just say that? You see, that would be the Brexit response. I want bins that empty themselves.
On the passport thing, James, I kind of welcome the idea, because it's a little victory for the Brexiters, and as a Remainer, I want them to have as many little victories that are actually meaningless as possible, and hopefully the big stuff like free movement and access to the single market can
and bins. Don't forget bins.
And bins, self-emptying bins. Fingers crossed.
But it doesn't really work like that, does it? You're thinking that if you toss a sardine to a lion, he won't bite your arm off.
I know it doesn't, but James, I've got a German wife, and I've spent the best part of 18 months worrying that she might not be able to stay here anymore.
Yeah, but that doesn't matter, because we're going to be able to, we're not going to have EU directives transposed into law by statutory instruments, even though I can't really name any laws that I'm not looking forward to losing, but, bins.
Our bananas might be straighter,
fish.
So there's that.
Do you get it? The part, I mean, because the sense that if I'd carried on talking to Ross until next Christmas, we would have made no progress whatsoever. This weird impasse now that we can see all of the evidence, and he still has this sense that, which is why he gets so touchy when you repeat his own words back to him. He has this sense that these words somehow carry weight. Yes, it matters. On the one side of the scale, we're losing this, and this, but look what we're getting. Yeah, something about statutory instruments and blue passports. Do you know what? I want to get it better. I want to understand more.
I mean, so do I, but I don't think there is much to understand. I think a lot of the Brexit arguments have just been, you're
being very simplistic and immature, if you don't mind me saying so.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. I try to do that a little every day, but it just I try and have these conversations, and my father was like a paid-up member of UKIP and supported the BNP, and me, a socialist, it's horrible. And I try and have these discussions, and we just go round in circles. And I think people are find it very hard to admit that they maybe made a mistake, and it's going to be one of the most costly mistakes that they'll ever make.
Why do people find it so hard, do you think?
I don't know, and I wish I did. I wish I understood. I think there's a part of it that's human nature, and we get convinced of things, and it takes so much to make us change our mind, and it's a shame, and it's a pity, and I wish people could see what I've been able to see from the beginning, and I don't want to make myself sound like, oh, aren't I great and everything?
No, mate, you just got eyes.
Yeah, exactly, and I feel like that we gain so much. I am so lucky that I can work anywhere in the continent. If my wife's family got ill and we had to move over there, I could do that right now.
But don't you feel that you don't understand that you can do that right now, but in the future you won't be able to, and that's a good thing, because we won't be transposing EU directives using statutory instruments.
No, well, exactly. And
you could probably put plastics in with your glass if we really hang in there.
Oh, maybe. Well, maybe they'll start recycling glass in my area now we're leaving the EU, so there is.
You mean they don't? But I thought every house in the country was exactly the same, enslaved to identical directives imposed upon us by the jackbooted bureaucrats of Brussels.
If only. No, not.
How then, if I'm talking to the lad in Abu Dhabi, how do I conduct the conversation in a way that simultaneously doesn't allow him to churn nonsense, but also doesn't send him away feeling stupid? How could I do it in a more charitable way?
I think these conversations need to be little. Let's just look at the little things one at a time. Lots of conversations. Share a drink with them. Be their mates. And say, look, I don't see it like that, and this is why.
I tried to do that, and he called me immature.
Well, we're all guilty of that a few times, but maybe not you in those circumstances.
What are you getting your dad for Christmas?
I'm getting him. I'm going to visit him for Christmas.
Is that the present?
That's the present message. The present of my company.
What do you get? What do you get a BNP stroke UKIP supporting dad for Christmas? We could do the second hour of the programme on that if you want.
Yes, please. I can do with some ideas.
It's 10:30. That is why. That comment I made about the Christmas armistice is so important. My dad won't be around this Christmas for the 5th time. And even if he had been a UKIP BNP supporter, which I grant you is highly unlikely, but even if he had been, I'd rather have him here than not have him here. So do try, I know it's a little bit Christmas crackery, do try to bear that in mind, and do try to have a crack at telling me what I should be pleased about today. Oh, man alive, I can't get past that notion of a German correspondent phoning up the news desk in Berlin to tell them what's top of the news agenda in Britain. The Sun, the best-selling newspaper in the country, thinks you care about the colour of your passport. And I'm looking for people who do. Phones are a bit busy at the moment, which is odd, really, for the day before, well, not the day before Christmas, but the day that we break up for Christmas. Lots of excellent people keeping you company on LBC throughout the festive period. Don't forget Steve Allen on Christmas Day. That is an absolute must-listen. While you peel the sprouts. That's what I do. I always think of sprouts when I think of Steve. Here's a question. If I apply for a passport now, I'd still get a European Union passport, and it would be valid for 10 years. So will I get 10 years going in the quick queue, while all the kind of people with the new blue ones have to queue up? That's a genuine question. Will it still, because it'll be an EU passport? Or are we all going to have to... We just don't. Why am I even asking? Yesterday, the government published papers telling us that fishing fleets are often to be found near coastal towns. In other words, fish live in the sea. And this is considered it was kept under lock and key, that, for a couple of weeks, that sectoral analysis. So the chances of David Davis knowing what's going to happen. What happens if I arrive at Gare du Nord and hop off the Eurostar? What happens now? Do I show anything now? I don't think I do I? I show my passport at Waterloo to get on the train, but I'm pretty sure once I'm on it, I just waltz off again. Well, that's going to go. That's going to change. What's going to happen? If I've got an EU passport, am I going to be able to go to the front of the queue like I can now in European Union countries and just wave at all the Americans moaning in the massive... I don't know. And when I sit here as a journalist 2 years ago, when I'd say, I don't know, but someone will, I don't do that anymore. I don't know. Nobody knows. Don't need to know. It's that geography teacher from my school I used to tell you about all the time. If it wasn't on, he wasn't much of a geography teacher. He was a PE teacher who'd done an Open University degree in geography, so he could get extra wages by teaching some geography. So all he knew was the contents of the curriculum. If you asked him anything else about geography that wasn't in that year's GCSE curriculum, he had no idea. And he'd say, don't know, don't need to know, nobody knows. It was his catchphrase. That's like the catchphrase for Brexit. What's going to happen to customs posts? What's going to happen in Northern Ireland? Don't know. Nobody knows. Don't need to know. What's actually going to happen if I've still got a passport that says European Union on it? And who honestly thought that after we voted to leave, because this is what I'm getting now from the people who haven't got the nerve to ring in, I'm getting, you don't understand, it's not about the colour, it's about the words European Union. Nobody is thick enough to have thought that we'd have to still have the words European Union on our passports after leaving the European Union. Surely, even by the standards of Brexit bonkersness, you thought we'd still have to have the words. Surely everybody knew that. No? Oh. Stuart's in Aberystwyth. A lot of love coming from Wales today, Stuart. What would you like to say?
Yeah, there's a lot of us, isn't there? Basically, it's just another lie, really. We've never had a Burgundy passport.
You need to hop over to Abu Dhabi and give a bloke a wake-up call. You can tell him he'll be putting his bins out with a really angry face.
On the bottom of the resolution, which was the 23rd of June, 1981, it says... Member States may, without prejudice to the passport drawn up in accordance with this resolution, continue to issue the old type of passport.
Yeah. No, but I don't want you reading from actual documentation. I want you to use glib catchphrases that you don't really understand, like transposing European Union law using statutory instruments. Ha 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 ha! Take that and shove it up your fundament.
Well, basically, it's another lie. We've been lied to.
And what happens now? Are you like me now? Do you think, oh, I've said that, I've read it from the actual document, I'm 100% right and I've proved it, everybody will now agree with me? Or have you now reached a point where you know that no needle on the other side of the fence will have nudged a tiny, tiny bit? Here's the actual document. It's like the Ted Heath letter. When he said it is much more than just a trading arrangement. He actually wrote it down and published it in glorious black and white for the British public. But still, we were only supposed to be joining a trading arrangement. It's not a lie. It's more subtle. It's more... I don't know what the word is. It's not a lie. It's a delusion.
But then, you could say to some of these Brexiters that, the sky's pink.
You could now, couldn't you? You could shoot someone on Fifth. You could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and still get their votes.
Well, exactly.
Do we know what's going to happen at Gare du Nord after Brexit? If I hop off the Eurostar, at the moment I can just roll into the nearest patisserie and have a lovely eclair. What's going to happen in the future? Do you know?
Possibly customs.
Don't need to know.
But no one knows.
Nobody knows. Don't know. Don't need to know. Should we have a look at the... Should we just have a quick look at the... So I'll read a nice one first. This is John. It pains me to say this, but I voted to leave on a wave of emotion, and now the honeymoon period has passed. I feel nothing but guilt. The trouble is, I can't admit this openly, so I have to double down and cross my fingers. And now we'll find a... here you go. This is the sound of someone doubling down and crossing their fingers. OK, I'll make you greedy Remainers understand. Less people equals higher wages, more homes, lower home prices, more school places, less time waiting to see a doctor, etc., etc., and it goes on and on. So there, in a quite beautiful little vignette, it's people, the enemy are greedy, but I want more money, more homes, and less time waiting to see a doctor. All of the evidence is that none of that is going to happen, but the other side are greedy, and I'm absolutely right. What do you do? What am I going to do next year? I can't carry on forever, Stuart. I'm going to have to find a new hobby horse.
Well, exactly. I mean, they'll just run out of people to blame in the end.
No, history suggests they never, ever run out of people to blame. They just dig ever deeper, and I wouldn't want to be unemployed or disabled in this country when the pips begin to squeak. Michael is in... Well, I wouldn't want to be unemployed or disabled in this country now, actually, but things ain't going to be getting any better, unless, of course, your man here is correct, and we are all about to see a disappearance of all the people who are going to see the doctors without any disappearance of the 48% of doctors who are from overseas. Michael's in Morden. Come on. A passport of purest blue, Michael. What are we missing?
Well, I don't think that it's such a big deal in so much as it's just, for me, I think it's just symbolism. I mean, at the end of the day, I know you're a staunch Remainer.
No, I'm a rationalist. So I probably don't buy into symbolism.
I listen to you every day. You really... No, but you don't buy into symbolism. But when people march and they've got the European flag, you've not got a problem with it. And simultaneously, that's symbolism. So,
well, but I think they're both pointless. Well, why are you telling me what I think about people march? When did people march with the European flag? Do you know, I wasn't sure what the European flag was until the Queen wore that hat.
Well, this is what I'm saying. I mean, it's just symbolism, and it's just people feeling the need to identify with something.
So tell me how a different coloured passport changes how you identify.
Because it makes you know that you're different from everybody else with the European passport. So if you
Except
have
Croatians.
a passport... I mean, I'm old enough. I'm exactly the same age.
Except Croatians. You feel different from everybody else, but not Croatian.
I don't. I was dating a Croatian girl. I've been to Croatia. You know,
but you won't feel different from her because she'll have a passport that's the same colour as yours.
Well.
So your sense of identity, is based upon wanting to feel different from other people.
No, my sense of identity doesn't.
What then?
Sorry, no, it doesn't make I want to feel different, but the fact that if the UK does change to a blue, it does symbolise the fact that it's a UK passport and not the European Union passport.
But it says United Kingdom on the front.
Yeah, but it doesn't, though. I changed from
it does.
blue to the... No, I understand what you're saying. I mean,
I'm not saying anything. I'm just describing something that's just real.
Yeah, you're describing a blue passport and you're trying to make it kind of like, you know, it's quite petty to change it to the blue. And I understand where you're coming from. And I
don't even know if it's petty. I want to understand why you care.
Well, people care because it symbolises something.
No, don't talk to me about people. I want you tell me why you are going to feel different with a blue passport in your hand compared to how you feel with a burgundy one.
And do you know what? If I veer away from the topic, are you not going to cut me off?
Of course I'm going to cut you off. I want you to tell me how you are going to feel different with a blue passport. You can't start talking about the football.
All right, let me tell you why I feel different. I personally would feel a little bit different with a blue passport. And the reason being because it would make me know that I am affiliated to the UK.
And you don't know that now?
And I'm not affiliated to the 28 member states. And I know that you keep banging on about it, but do you know what? I'm a black guy, and I've been to Europe, and black people in Europe are
I just want to pick you up on one other thing. That's a valid point. I'm not disputing that, but it isn't what we're asking. At the moment, when you carry a burgundy passport, you don't feel affiliated to the United Kingdom.
Not really, no. I'm affiliated to 28 member states.
Okay.
I'm not saying that's a bad thing.
You're being honest. I thank you for your honesty. Doesn't make any sense at all to me, but it's your reality.
No, but what I'm trying to say is that when you know, if you voted to leave and you voted for whatever people have voted for, whatever their reasons and sovereignty, etc., then they want to naturally know that, you know, they have disassociated themselves from the 27 member states. And that blue passport is a symbol of that.
More than Article 50? More than Article 50, more than the referendum result, more than the actual act of departure. You need a symbol that makes you feel more unaffiliated than you do now with the European Union. Mate, like I say, I'm grateful to you for your honesty. I think that's nuts. I'm holding both in my hand. My left hand feels different from my right hand. Does it? I've got a blue one, I've got a burgundy one. One's got European Union written on it, one hasn't. All I want to know, Michael, is what that passport can give me. And you want the passport that will give you less. And that seems to me baffling.
What do you mean by give you less?
Oh, for heaven's sake, mate, you can't use a non-European Union passport to travel visa-free in European Union countries. Take that to the bank. Here, my lord, is a passport of purest blue. It's not as powerful as the burgundy one. It won't get you into as many places as easily, but it's blue. And that is great. Why? 03456060973. Can I just share something with you? Because you think I exaggerate this stuff. Okay, I'd like to clarify, I'm 99% sure that our caller from Aberystwyth was reading from the correct documentation when he reminded us that we were by no means duty-bound. It's the victim mentality, isn't it? The notion that we're somehow being ordered around by nasty foreign people, completely ignoring the fact that it's an organisation that we are part of, previously one of the most powerful parts. But yeah, you're not allowed to put your bins where mate, here's the proof that you're talking nonsense. Yeah, well, they made us have a burger. Mate, here's the proof that you're talking nonsense. If you don't believe that, just go to Croatia. Well, they'll be forced to do it soon, but they're not, and they won't, and they never were. And then yesterday, the sectoral analysis, the Brexit sector reports were published. It meant the public could see them for the first time, as opposed to parliamentarians and I think some journalists who were allowed an hour in a locked room with them. And they contained paragraphs like this. This is what David Davis has been doing for 18 months. Electricity is a fundamental part of modern society. This is the analysis of the energy sector. In case you missed that, and indeed in case you're reeling from the shock at this revelation, electricity is a fundamental part of modern society. Residential and industrial users rely on its use to ensure basic and vital needs such as lighting, heating, or refrigeration are met on a daily basis. That is the preparation that they're doing to undertake the most important and most difficult negotiations this country has ever seen. That counts as analysis. Electricity is a fundamental part of modern society. What's on the front page of the best-selling newspaper in the country today? An absolute attack upon such appalling politics, or an exclusive about blue passports. Rob's in Hebden Bridge, lovely part of the world. What have you got, Rob?
I just want to say that I think you're doomed to go home from the studio today feeling totally frustrated.
I refuse to give in to frustration. A chink of light will appear in the sky above me, and it will be something to do with bins, and it will be brilliant.
Well, you're expecting a rational, reasoned answer to what is quite a rational, reasoned question. You're not going to get it because most people who voted Brexit, not every one of them, but most, did so on pure emotion without real...
How dare you? How dare you sneer and condescend to 17.4 million people, all of whom are cleverer than you?
Well, you know what? During the referendum campaign, I was never wildly keen on the EU, and I could have been convinced to vote leave if I'd have got the answers to two things. I used to say, OK, if we leave, what's the plan?
Yes.
Never got a plan.
No. Plans are for wimps, man. Come on. We're Rule Britannia. That's the plan. We'll just sort of put a fish in our pocket and sing Jerusalem.
Yeah, well, that was the sort of answer I got.
Yeah,
and
I know. I wish I was joking.
I asked, is what are we actually going to gain?
Yes.
The country. And other than I got told, well, all the bureaucracy and the red tape will go.
Yes.
When I said, what bureaucracy and red tape? Well, you know, all those things that they do to us, but nothing specific. I think we're beginning to see...
Hang on a minute. Can we fade Rob out? It sounds like he could do my job better than I do. They pay me the silly money. I've got kids. My kids need shoes. I can't allow Rob to audition for my job. You actually asked people to name factual benefits of leaving, and they couldn't? I built an entire career on doing that over the last 2 years, Rob.
They did say all the red tape, but they couldn't be specific. But I think we're seeing now, aren't we, with Michael Gove?
Yeah.
As what bureaucracy, removing bureaucracy means. It means getting rid of the working time directive, and that means, you know, unpaid holiday leave. It means a right...
It's an overtime bonanza, according to The Sun. The fact that your boss can compel you to work more than 48 hours a week and you're not allowed to say no. Get in!
Well, that's who it's for.
Oh, dear.
Sorry,
That's all right, mate. That's all right. I'm here. I'm lonely. It's nice to be joined down the mine shaft by a fellow canary, but there we are. What do you want for Christmas, Rob? Not off me. I'm not getting anybody anything.
What do I want for Christmas?
Yeah.
I'd like a second vote, but we'll never get one.
Would you like? I'm going to give you a little treat. It's my advent calendar from the analysis reports that were published yesterday. I'm just going to open the second door. Are you ready for this, Rob?
Go on then. Go on.
In coastal communities, fishing brings employment and economic activity. Fishing, along with its ancillary indices, e.g., fish processing, boat building, and servicing.
Right.
So fishing is a job.
Right. Yeah.
You feel better now?
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, really.
Yeah. Huh? Also, it's usually in coastal areas.
God, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what to say.
No, nor do I, mate. Nor do I. We're redefining radio this morning. I don't know what to say either. This is astonishing. This is like Franz Kafka doing a phone-in. I don't know what to say, Rob. Do you know what to say, Rob?
No, I don't.
Rob doesn't know what to say.
I just watched the whole process with growing bewilderment and exasperation at just how people will not. They operate entirely. I mean, you get this thing about we'll get our country back.
Yep.
Ignoring the fact that we sold half the country off to foreign sort of companies and investments. Look at our railways that are run by sort of foreign countries.
This is one of my
nationalised countries.
No. It is wrong to say that this government does not believe in state-owned utilities, Rob. It's just foreign states that are allowed to own our utilities and not us.
Yeah, like French railways.
Railways, German power companies, you name it. It's just as long as they're not British governments that own our utilities. It's foreign government, but we'll be getting our country back. I got some scoopy. Seriously, am I allowed to tell you this? Yes, I am. After the vote came in, when the pound went down, a lot of European countries piled in to buy our electricity because it was so cheap, because they were obviously dealing in euros. So if you went back, I don't know that this got reported, actually. It was one of the little stories I pick up over the mince pies as I speak to friends and family over Christmas. So a pal of mine who works in the sector was explaining how German and France, they were buying cheap electricity from us because the pound had tanked. I don't know if that's necessarily a negative or a positive. I just thought it was quite interesting. Ricardo is in Hounslow. A passport, Ricardo, of purest blue.
I'm going to help you understand why people want a blue passport.
Come on then.
I'm going to use one of your own anecdotes. So you said you stopped rugby back in the day. Even though you liked it, you were good at it, and you enjoyed it.
You've been listening very closely. I can't make that presumption on the part of everybody. I did. I had an anti-authoritarian streak that probably did me more harm than good in some context, but not in all.
But you didn't like being told what to do, and so even though that was going to help you, you didn't like it. So
yes.
Ultimately, the EU helps this country greatly, but people don't want to be told what to do. Like the man with the bins, he didn't have an alternative to his bins. He just didn't want to be told what to do with his bins.
But he was wrong about being told what to do as well.
Yeah, but that's just, we're past that now. Well past that.
You can't go past it. You can never go past it. That's called hypernormalisation. You have to keep pointing in the rearview mirror and saying, look, you were wrong about that. Look, that's been proved. Otherwise, you end up with Owen Paterson, who can say 12 months later the polar opposite of what he said 12 months ago, and the British journalists let him get away with it.
I agree, but we've all been doing this for 18 months and nothing's changed.
What? Well, it is changing. It's slowly shifting. You can see a change in tone, you can see a change in process, and you can see a change in opinion, actually, from people who are employing reason as opposed to emotion. And emotion's great. Emotion is what separates us from the animals. Emotion is what love is, nothing wrong with emotion, but it does, as you've reminded us, sometimes make us do really, really stupid things. So can you imagine feeling differently, like Michael did earlier? He will feel somehow more British when his passport is not burgundy anymore. Can you imagine that? Can you begin to understand that?
No, but didn't you say that Croatia done it anyway? We could have changed.
Phone line's gone. It's happening a lot at the moment. I blame Brexit. James is in Waterlooville in Hampshire. James, a passport of purest blue. Sell it to me.
Well, I'm actually with you, James.
Oh, come on. Where are all the passporters?
I'm sorry.
Oh.
I'm sorry. Well, I mean, it comes back to the fact that it's this sort of inspired this sort of debate is simply down to it being a distraction, in my opinion. I think, when you look at David Davis's abomination in what he's sort of said towards what do you call it? With David Davis, the story yesterday.
The analysis report, stuff like this. As an island nation, the UK has been dependent on the sea for its trade and defence throughout history, and strong traditions of merchant seafaring can be traced back hundreds of years.
Yes, he's stating the obvious here, and it's the fact that it's in the sun. It's the bit of pie that the British people.
You see, my cynicism gene is going haywire at the moment. I've given up trying to work out what I think is deliberate and what I think is just delusional or incompetent. But you're suggesting that if they hadn't thrown this particular blue bone to the Sun, then the Sun might have had the wherewithal to actually report upon the abomination that was yesterday's publication of the sector analyses.
Yes, I mean...
But, mate, how could we possibly embark upon negotiations with the most powerful trading bloc on the planet without having documents published reminding us that, and I quote, postal services are visible and valued by both members of the public and businesses, James? That's not... How can you criticise that? That's really important analysis.
The analysis that they're throwing at us now is the British public they want what's in the sun. They're happy to talk about this debate on blue about blue passports and more importantly, as you mentioned earlier, about the countries you can visit with your current passport and with our current passport.
It's taking us right up to the wire. No, well, I don't know. I'm not going to give up. I have greater faith in my fellow man than you do. I think that there will be arguments explaining why the colour of your passport matters, or explaining why anybody laboured under the illusion that we'd still have European Union written on it when we weren't in the European Union anymore. I'm so confident I'm going to do another half an hour. I'll be happy until our driving licences are vellum or parchment. I'd like driving licences to be on goat skin. Then we'll have our country back. There's a sort of weird oscillation between dismay and humour this half hour. If of course you're on my side of reality, but if you're on the other side, I don't know quite what you'll be feeling. You're probably a sort of weird mixture of guilt and fury. Here's an interesting one. Carl's in Hammersmith. He writes, the blue passport seems insignificant to Remainers like you, James. However, to us Brexiters, it's a little piece of our identity we get back. Hopefully lots of little changes like this happen over the coming years. I'm so proud to be an indigenous Brit. Shame you don't have that sense of belonging, James. I understand why, though, mate. I really do. I will be reduced to reading out messages like that from people who haven't got the nerve to phone in, unless people ring in and try to tell me why having a blue passport makes them feel better, because I don't understand how you can talk about a sense of belonging while claiming that it depends on the colour of your passport. Let's try and imagine what life is like in Carl's head. Oh, I really don't feel like I belong. I really don't feel like I belong. I'm an indigenous Brit, but I don't belong. It's just not fair. My passport's burgundy. Here's a blue passport. Oh, my days, I've never felt more at home in this country than I do now. As an indigenous Brit, my identity is defined and enhanced by the colour of my passport. What colour is it again? It's blue. I'm taking that back. Here's a burgundy. Oh, no, I just don't feel like I belong anymore. I feel really dislocated and alienated. I really want my country. Here's a blue one. Oh, my days! Rule Britannia, God save the Queen, and did those feet in ancient times walk upon England's mountains? Here's a burgundy one. Oh, no, I feel like I might be French. Oh, God, I went to the shop. I accidentally bought a croissant. Here's a blue one. Hallelujah! Bacon and eggs for me, fish and chips for tea. Here's a burgundy one. Oh, my God, I just ate some sauerkraut. I think I might have poisoned myself. You must see how silly you are. If you really believe that the colour of your passport is somehow pertaining to your sense of identity. What if you were colourblind, Carl? 1 in 12 men are colourblind. Are they not British? Because they can't even see what colour their passport is. They're going to be standing in the queue wondering whether it's puce. Actually, if you're colourblind, ring me. 0345 606 0973. Clear a space, clear a light, clear a lane and a line for colourblind people. We want colourblind people on the programme to tell us how this debate sounds to you, OK? Rob is in Banbury in Oxfordshire. Rob, a passport of purest blue. Sell it.
It will make me feel incredibly different because the frustration of queuing for hours
and filling in visa forms.
Yeah, but we'll be a proper country, because we're not a proper country at the moment. We're a pretend country. Didn't you listen to the news?
It's the funny thing is that the coat of arms on the front of this passport will not change.
What?
The pages within the burgundy passport that we have at the moment are already filled with Great Britain's from history and beautiful things that Britain has within it and inventions that Great Britain...
It does, doesn't it? It has those lovely pastoral scenes. There's a strong suspicion that a lot of the people who are most excited about the regaining, if you're over 45 or thereabouts, of a blue passport probably would be a bit disgusted when they find out what passports are actually for.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is the big thing. I travel a lot with work. I use my passport every week, and that ease of using the European, the easy gates.
Yes.
We won't be able to use those anymore.
Yeah, but they're for losers.
The problem I've got at the moment is, and the fear...
No, hang on a minute, Rob. No, seriously. Okay. What are we the best at in the whole world?
Quite a few things. I don't know.
Queuing, mate.
Well, there's that.
Queuing. We're getting back the British brilliance at queuing. We're going to have longer queues than everybody. In fact, when we're in other countries, we're going to be in the longest queue.
There's that. There's one real fear I have at the end of all of this, and that is that the 52% who will have their blue passports and will be pleased with having their blue passports will be sat in that queue, waiting for hours and thinking, hold on, this isn't better. And it's just one more thing that isn't better, and we've been lied to, and these people that we trusted, okay, maybe they did lie to us. And if we look across the ponds to what's gone on...
Blue passports. Americans have blue passports.
Well, they do, but they've come out of 8 years of one of the most socially progressive leaders that they've had in a long time, and they've elected who they had because he promised he wasn't a politician like all the others. I'm not going to be a politician like all the others.
I'm going to be a gangster.
We will move to a point of mass division in this country, even more so than Brexit is doing at the moment, because those who believed in Brexit will realise they've been lied to and will want somebody that doesn't then represent politicians. And we will get to a point of the basic fabric of this country being torn apart.
Because people will double down on delusion. You have history on your side, but I'd like to think that Britain is better than that. We've never really... We've flirted with fascism. We've allowed fascists into the public space, which I think history will judge to have been a massive mistake. But I don't know. I still think the spirit of Cable Street would see most of us come down on the side of the residents, not the black shirts, brown shirts, black shirts.
The jingoism and it's not just pride in being British anymore. It's waving this blue passport in the sky and saying we are better than everybody else out there. How far to that extreme, how far to that right is this country going on the basis of fallacy and a lie?
We're pulling back. No, don't worry. Seriously. Think about it. Think of it as a generational divide. I believe, Rob, I don't know about you, that children are our future. Treat them well and let them show the way. See, I made you laugh. You see, I made you laugh. That's why they pay me the big bucks. It's 10 minutes after 11. Merry Christmas, Rob. Look after yourself. Don't be too downcast. I share all of your fears. But don't worry, if it gets really bad, I'll go into politics and save us all. John is in Cork, in Ireland. John, what have you got?
Well, greetings from what some Brexiteers would call the occupied territory of Ireland.
The occupied territory. Oh, Lord. They'll start telling you to leave the European Union next, won't they? That'll be the next chapter.
I know, yes. Oh, it's everywhere.
Is it really?
It's everywhere, James.
Get out of the European Union. Seriously, come and join us.
First off, happy Christmas before you kick me off the radio.
You're very welcome.
And have a good New Year.
And to you.
No, listen. No,
I'm listening. Come on, John.
The blue passport is daft.
What? How dare you? How dare you? You would say that, you Irishman.
I know, but, and I will say this to you now,
Go on.
I wouldn't use the Croatians as a good example of why, because they fought a very bloody civil war only 20 years ago.
They did.
To be recognized as a country. And if you turn around and say, oh yeah, we're getting rid of your passport colour, a lot of them will get upset.
It's not that. I mean, I'm not comparing like with like, I grant you, but I thought the fella in Aberystwyth was better than me on this when he just read out the bit that said you are not in no way compelled to... in fact, we probably need to change our news bulletin slightly. You are not required to have a burgundy one. We could have kept a blue one all along. It would have just been a bit silly, because in the queues at all the airports where we're allowed to go through fast track, it's easier if they're all the same colour. Now we'll have a special one that means we have to queue for longer.
You have two options. You'll have to queue, Or it could be worse. I went through Baltimore Airport last year.
Oh, my God.
And everyone goes through the same passport, and it takes 2 hours.
Oh, my days.
Just to get your passport checked.
That's outrageous.
Everyone's in the same
It's going to
line.
be like that everywhere for us now. Everywhere in the European Union, we're going to have to queue up for longer.
Sorry to say this. It is. It's going to be like that for you, and I will be drifting by you, James, and I will be in my EU queue, and I will go, oh, I'm going through because I have an EU passport, and you guys will be queuing for an hour, maybe two.
I will trip you over. I will trip you over. Actually, no, I won't. I'll pick up one of the kids' trunkies, those little sit-on wheelie suitcases, and I will smash you around the head with it, pal. That's fighting talk where I come from. You flying past me and I might be getting an Irish passport. Ha 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 ha.
Well, you see, then you'd be more than welcome. Be more than welcome. But then again, James, I'm going to say one thing.
Go on,
very serious note. I don't know if the EU is a good idea these days. I mean, the Catalans now want to do the same thing the Brexiteers are doing.
Not quite. I don't think Catalan want to leave the European Union. They want to leave Spain. It's not quite the same thing. It'd be more. Think of it more like the Scottish independence. If they'd called a referendum without permission from Westminster, then what would Westminster have done? Catalan can be confusing.
Yeah, but just remember what the EU said. If Scotland got its independence, it would have to start from the start to reapply.
Yes, but I think it would be quite easy to do.
10 years.
Nah, they'll do it overnight. Seriously, I'll just have a word with Barnier. They'll wave you through. Be a bit like having a British passport used to be in the European Union. No queuing, no fuss, no problem. Getting back in after leaving, different from segueing from membership as part of the United Kingdom to membership as a separate state of Scotland. Catalan, though, you're quite right, is the latest go-to point for people who don't really understand things, but who want to argue that the European Union is bad. You could probably just make a list of all the usual names who'll be weighing in on this. It would be like the West Midlands, or more pertinently Wales, having a referendum on leaving the United Kingdom without actually running it through the British Parliament. That's all that happened in Catalan. The heavy-handed response was disgraceful. But the Spanish police are knocking people out all the time. It's a different culture out there. If you're very good, before I go home today, I might tell you about the time I nearly got arrested in Barcelona. Chris is in Ealing. Chris, a passport of purest blue.
Well, look, I don't know what all the fuss is about. I think basically this could have been on page 5, and why we bought a worry about it, I've got no idea whatsoever.
Well, hang on, you're supposed to be helping me understand people who think this is really special, big day news headlines.
Well, I'm not going to get drawn into the same track some of the others came on, but the point is that new passports are going to get issued. Why not rebrand them blue? What difference does that make to anybody? It'll please some people, it won't bother others. It doesn't really cause a change at any cost.
No, but mate, I'm interested in the people who do really care, the people who used it during the referendum campaign. You actually had people saying, I really want a blue passport, and I want to know why. It's no good ringing me up and telling me that you're ambivalent about it. I want to understand the people who care.
I'll happily have a blue passport. It doesn't, I'm quite...
So will I. I don't care whether it's blue or bright green. I care what it does, and it's going to do less than my old one, which is slightly irritating. And I don't understand people who don't feel irritated by the fact that we're going to have fewer powers and privileges with our new passports than we had with our old ones, and all they can say to me in return is, yes, but it will be blue.
Yeah, but you're wrong, you see, because if I have a house in Italy, you have to go through passport control and passport check. When I come out of Italy, my passport is checked in a queue. I don't get any fast-track proof that I've got a European passport. I remember long before all the free borders, you could go to a post office, get a one-year passport, literally over the counter, and go to and from France on the ferries, because I lived that at the time, and to go to and from France all the time without a visa at all. You didn't need a visa.
I remember that as well. That was when I was a kid. We were in the European community.
But we
were in it. It was a British visitor's passport. You could only use it in European Union countries and Commonwealth countries. It had a list of them on the back. I think Belize was at the top, or Andorra.
It'd be quite easy for Europe, if it wanted to, as part of this, to maintain visa-free access for everybody.
Oh, no, you just don't get it, do you? The whole point about the Union is to have shared rights and privileges for every member state. They're not going to give them to non-member states, Chris. That is about as basic as it gets, my friend. But at least it'll be blue, yeah?
Rebrand England, go for blue passport. It means nothing to anybody.
Well, you can keep saying that, Chris, in the finest traditions of Brexit. You can keep saying that it won't change, nothing will change. We'll have all of the same visa-free travel that we have as members of it. You can keep saying it, but it never becomes true, my friend.
Well, it's true, but I've got an Irish passport anyway, so that's why I'm somewhat ambivalent. I can travel on both.
Well, hang on a minute. Why would you need an Irish passport? Why does that rescue you from the dangers of only having a British one if having a British one isn't going to change at all?
Well, because it depends on what queue I'm standing in. I'll go down the shorter
Well, no,
queue.
but hang on. So you do have different queuing times according on whether you have a European Union passport or not. Because the whole point of your call in your house in Italy was to tell us that we wouldn't, that things were going to be exactly the same, Chris.
Well, I think generally speaking they will be. I think generally speaking, I don't.
So you think things are going to be exactly the same, but you're really glad that you've got an Irish passport, which will ensure that you retain the privileges attached to a European Union passport when you lose the ones attached to a British passport, even though you think things are going to be exactly the same.
Who doesn't take out insurance on their house?
Oh, Chris. Yeah.
But that's the point. But I don't.
Mate, when I went quiet, I wasn't inviting you to keep talking. I was presuming that you'd realise the ridiculousness of the position you've arrived in.
Not ridiculous at all.
No, he hasn't.
Just more common sense in more people.
Yeah, common sense.
You know, no, I'm not going to react like the others. It's a blue.
What do you mean you're not going to react like the others, mate? You've already made a much bigger muppet of yourself than the others.
Well, no, I think you've been making a muppet of yourself all morning.
Oh, I know you are, but what am I?
Well, exactly, but you have got the microphone.
I know you are, but what am I?
Well, no, what I'm saying is, I think...
I know you are, but what am I?
Well, I just said you made a muppet of yourself this morning.
I know you are, but what am I?
Well, exactly. We can keep going down that route. But the point is, this is not the issue, and it shouldn't be the central issue. It's a blue passport. It's part of a rebranding. Who cares?
Thank you, Chris. It's 11:18. This just in. It's Theresa May's letter to Santa Claus. Dear Santa, as you know, we will no longer believe in you from the 29th of March 2019. However, we would like to maintain the closest possible relationship with you, even after we have stopped believing. We therefore fully expect to get the same presents as before. You need us more than we need you, but we will no longer have to abide by your rules of being good and stuff. We will attach a full list of the presents that we want as soon as we can agree on them amongst ourselves. To tell the truth, we only just started talking about that. Please also bear in mind that you'll no longer be able to deliver your presents like before, flying in with the sleigh, as we're taking control of our own borders. Although we do still expect you to deliver the presents, I'm sure we'll come up with some technological solutions to solve this further down the line. We're determined to make a success of not believing in Santa, while still getting you to deliver all our presents. Yours, Theresa May. My thanks to whoever wrote that. It's been going a little bit nuts on social media, but I don't know where it began life. It has a little flavour of the comedian and writer David Schneider to me, but Lim sent it to me, so thank you, Lim. And if you are a child listening and you're confused by that, we're just mocking people who don't believe in Santa because they're not going to get any presents, but they are going to get a blue passport. Johnny's in Lincolnshire. Johnny, what made you pick up the phone?
Johnny, sorry.
That's all right, mate. I'll be James. That's all right.
I'm a little bit nervous.
Don't be.
Yeah, I was listening to your show and you just happened to mention about colour-blindedness,
yes.
Which I am. And the colour passports wouldn't be an issue to me because I wouldn't be able to tell if they were red, blue, purple or yellow, to be honest.
Yeah, but you here you go, Carlin Hammersmith. It's a little piece of your identity that you're getting back, Johnny. It doesn't really matter whether you can see the colour or not, just feel the identity.
Well, I couldn't give two hoots, to be honest.
How can I communicate to a colourblind person why it's so important that our passport should be blue? You will be... what colours can you see? Well, how does it work for you?
It greys. So, in other words, a blue passport would look slightly greyer than... a burgundy passport, which would be a slightly lighter grey. So I could tell the difference, but they will be just shades of grey.
But won't you feel more British with the slightly darker shade of grey than you do with the slightly lighter shade of grey?
Well, to be honest, James, I'm applying for an Italian passport anyway.
What colour will that be? Burgundy?
Burgundy.
Or light grey?
But grey to me.
Light grey to you. What does it feel like then? Because I could carry on with this conversation until, I don't know, a month of Sundays. You hear people, as someone who doesn't see colour, you hear people... I presume racism is quite interesting to you as well, is it, or not?
Different shades of grey.
Different shades of grey. How many different shades of grey do you see? Don't say 50, or I will scream.
Well, traffic lights, which could be an issue...
Yeah.
Are different shades of grey. Amber is a light grey. The red traffic light is the darkest of the three greys of a traffic light.
Oh, crikey.
But as long as I know... but you obviously know because they go in sequence, so you know what you're doing.
Red, and amber, green. What then have you... I'm surprised you're still listening after an hour and 24 minutes this morning about a conversation that must, to you, sound like absolute gibberish.
Well, I've never understood the reasons that we're leaving the EU anyway. I'm being half Italian, to be honest. I feel more European than I do British.
I mean, I can explain it to you. You clearly don't understand the importance of a slightly darker shade of grey compared to a slightly lighter shade of grey, and that's because you're a Ramona and you don't feel at home here, and you're not an indigenous Brit. You're half Italian, mate. If you weren't half Italian, you'd really understand why a slightly different shade of grey on your passport is somehow fundamental to your sense of national identity and belonging.
Well, it's not. And to be honest, in the last 12 months, I've felt less British than I ever have done previously. I don't recognise this country anymore. Not for a long time.
Mate, take it easy. You've kind of rained on my parade. I'm managing to keep a degree of comedy involved in the sadness of the whole thing. Living in a country where people actually believe Johnny should feel differently because his passport is moving from slightly light grey to slightly darker grey. That's it. Remember, that is reality. But reality is unfashionable at the moment. Johnny Mindheld, it was a great debut. I look forward to your next one. 11:25 is the time. Simon is in Westminster. Simon, what is the appeal of a passport of purest blue with two words not on it that are currently on it at the moment?
Well, I think it's very significant. I think it's a metaphor for coming out of the EU. I think...
Why do we need a metaphor if we're doing it for real?
Because it's a symbol that actually the colour of the what we do with the front page or the cover is just up to us. It's the chip in the middle that's really important, and that is determined not by British law, not by EU law, but by international law.
Not anymore. We won't be getting involved in international law, mate. We want British laws for British people.
No, absolutely not. We are going to, and that's why I'm saying it's a metaphor, because so much of what we do now is determined by international law, not by EU law, not by British law. And the reason this passport is significant is because when we last had a blue one, it was purely what we did that was important. As long as it had our name and our nationality, that was all that's important. But in the 25, 30, whatever years it's changed, the main thing has changed is the significance of doing things internationally and conforming to each other, not according to EU and not according to local British law, unless we're dealing with local issues like education, health and police and things like that.
So you have smuggled in a negative while pretending to present a positive. I'm not stupid, Simon.
You're certainly not stupid, James.
Merry Christmas, Simon. How are we going to do this? I mean, do you understand what people mean when they say they will feel different with a blue passport in their hand compared to a burgundy one, or do you, like me, just sort of shake your head in confusion?
I think that if the EU had played its game correctly, it would have given us all a feeling of being local and national, while in the background being the EU, but it didn't. It things up with these inanimate objects in Brussels trying to play the EU card when in fact it's not an EU, it's an international world we're in.
That's an interesting point.
That's why this is so significant, because it really compares now against when we had the last passport, and life is completely different now, and that's the significant thing, not whether we're part of EU or not EU.
Okay. Although, I mean, in terms of trade, not being in the largest free market in the world is probably going to take a while to be good news.
That'll have sorted itself out, because
Will it?
The EU is not going to have...
Hang on, say that again. I couldn't quite hear the sound of you crossing your fingers when you said that.
I was crossing my fingers.
Okay.
Absolutely. No. Trade agreements are for bringing down barriers, not raising them.
Unless you're protecting the trade agreement that you've got and someone else has just opted out of, in which case it is arguably not going to be as good as the trade agreement you had in the first place. In fact, not even arguably, Simon. We won't fall out. It's 11:28. James is in Merthyr Tydfil. Big in Wales today. Very big in Wales. Blue passport, Simon. James, why so exciting?
Well, James, before you stop ripping me and being sarcastic and start blowing in the air...
You've only got 55 seconds left,
That's fine, I'm going to be straight to the point, mate, is that I'm happy that we're going to have a British passport back, and on the reverse, when the Europeans come across to the UK, are they going to be waiting for hours and hours and hours with their European passport, because they have to go through a different immigration gate as well? How's that going to work?
Well, I imagine it will be more difficult for them than it is currently, but I'm not sure because we haven't got any infrastructure in place and no one's told us what our borders and our customs posts are going to look like. That's a consequence of Brexit, mate.
No, it's not a consequence of Brexit.
What is it, then?
We've got our passport back, we've got our freedom back, and that's the end of it, James. So, unfortunately, you lost.
We've got... Did he put the phone down? Oh, rats. That's me. Owned and completely defeated at the altar of rhetoric, because we've got our freedom and we've got our passports back. You lost. Man, James in Merthyr Tydfil is my new favourite caller, I think. More of that, I hope, in the coming hour or half an hour. After 12 o'clock, I'd like to turn your attention to built-in obsolescence in the context of iPhones. I find this fascinating, but I appreciate it brings out my inner partridge. When I were a lad, we took things to be fixed all the time. My mum had a Hoover, and it was actually a Hoover, so I'm not conflating the brand name with the technology. My mum had a Hoover that was older than me. She had it when I was born, and only about 5 years ago did it finally give up the ghost. It weighed about half a ton, but it was an upright. Obviously, I don't think there was any other kind back in the day, but we'd just take it to get fixed. I've probably had 5 Hoovers in the course of my marriage. If you've just turned on your radio, I should probably stress that this is not the main topic of conversation. I've just had 5 Hoovers in the course of my marriage. We're talking about blue passports, much more important things, and why, if you like, it would impart to it. And it's very hard for me to do this without sounding condescending, because I do find it ridiculous. You have to allow me to find it ridiculous, and then I will allow you to educate me about why it's not ridiculous at all. How could anybody feel that their sense of self or identity, whether national or personal, was in any way defined by the colour or even affected by the colour of their passport? Especially when we spoke to Johnny down in Lincolnshire, who is colourblind. So to him, it's just moving from light grey to slightly less light grey. And yet it's supposed to be a significant, profound change. And then when you ask people, then either they sort of unravel a bit in a slightly embarrassing way, or they slam down the phone in a massive lap of honour. Woohoo! Patrick's in Denmark. Patrick, I'm not going to be able to talk to you after March 2019. What would you like to say?
I better get it in today then, because it's running out soon, isn't it?
See, what have we got?
Passport, you missed the point, James. Honestly, it's a fashion statement.
Go on.
You can go in the pub on a Sunday lunchtime with that blue passport and show your identity. It's a bit like moving on from a football shirt. There's one problem with it, as I remember, though. Denim jeans, they're also blue, and it won't fit in the front pocket.
Well, my friend Nick...
put it in the back.
My friend Nick has been in touch to tell me that he's going to have to replace his entire travel wardrobe because he doesn't want a colour clash with the new passport. He will use British designers and suggests that if everybody did the same, this would be a massive boost to our economy.
Absolutely. There's a couple of things that could be wrong with it. There are a number of countries that don't have British embassies, and I think the idea was that we would rely on the services of some of the other 27 member states to help us out if we got into difficulties. But I'm sure that'll be fine.
But that is actually true. I mean, I know that we've been dealing in a sort of curious mix of delusion and nonsense today, but actually that is true. You could, in the absence of a British consulate or a British embassy, go to any European Union consulate or embassy and seek similar protections. I'm sure it's not a perfect system, but again, we find ourselves wondering how anybody could be pleased at surrendering protections and consulate help in foreign countries. I'm really pleased because it's blue, Patrick.
Yes, I'm very pleased as well. But there was one other thing on a serious note that I've been doing business-to-business sales for many, many years, and I was originally selling for UK companies exporting into Europe, and I can remember the paperwork that you had to have in order to take products, particularly electronic products, to exhibitions. And it was a sheet of, I think it was 6 or 7 sheets, and you had to go through the red zone each time. So if you were driving, because you've gone in the red zone, they have to check absolutely everything. So you needed to arrive quite early for a ferry or for an aircraft, because they want to go through absolutely everything. And the best bit was when you got to your final destination, you had to repeat the process. But of course, the paperwork was written in English, so quite often, and I remember the longest wait I ever had was in Hungary, in Budapest.
Oh, yeah.
They had to find a guy who could actually read the paperwork in order for me to get it stamped, in order for me to leave the airport. And that was approximately 3 hours.
You see, you're addressing, I think, the people who say, well, we were absolutely fine before, which, of course, I mean, half the country and almost the entire workforce of the country can't remember life before we were in the European community because...
One more point.
Go on.
One more point. International driving licence when you hired cars. Do you remember having to have those?
No, of course I don't. I only learned to drive at 32, mate. Give me a break.
Well, that was another fact. First time I went to France, Italy and Spain, I had to have an international driving licence in order to hire a car. And that was in addition to your other one. It was like a grey...
Up until when? Well, up until the mid-70s was that then?
I can't remember what it was. No, it was after the 70s because it must have been 80s.
Really? I don't know. Someone will. I don't really do motoring issues, even on Brexit days.
But it's the same size the driving licence, so that wouldn't fit in your pocket either.
You need bigger pockets, mate. You need Brexit pockets. Making pockets great again. 11:38 is the time. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where I suppose, I mean, apart from just saying you won, sorry, we won, you lost, ha ha ha, we haven't really made any progress at all. We had the fella in Hammersmith, but he only texted in to tell me that as an indigenous Brit, he's getting his identity back, and I don't belong. But I would argue, I think, that a sense of belonging that's affected by the colour of your passport is probably a lot weaker than a sense of belonging that isn't. Genuinely, I can't keep doing this, can I? Because I'm chasing you away while begging you to ring. There's one phone line free. You can have the one that's just been vacated. Just explain to me in a way that doesn't... I can't, because I have to be able to ask you. That's what frustrates people so much, isn't it? Is that you're not allowed to just say stuff. You have to explain it. And when I ask you to explain it, which is when I hold up the mirror, and you look in the mirror, and you realise you're a person that thinks that their sense of national identity is affected by whether or not Johnny thinks your passport is dark grey or light grey, and you feel so stupid that you take it out on me. But that's all right. That's what I'm here for. I'm like a kind of fool in King Lear. I'm the jester on whom you can take out all of your frustrations. But remember, all I'm doing, Blue Passport fans, is holding up a mirror. Come and have a look in the mirror. Tell me what you see. Oh, I see a bit of a balloon, to be honest with you, mate. I don't like being a balloon, so I am very angry with you. If you're really angry about what you're seeing in the mirror, don't get angry with who's holding up the mirror. Get angry with the person being reflected back at you. And then get angry with the person that turned you into this balloon. Perhaps, just a thought. Nikki's in Hornchurch. Nikki, a passport of purest blue. Sell it to me.
No, my point is it doesn't make no difference to the passport colour, does it really? The bottom line is it represents more than that, doesn't it?
Go on.
Well, we've got 1 million plus migrants that have come from the Middle East into Germany and Europe over the past few years. Many of them from the intelligence services believe that have terrorist links or links to ISIS. And then...
Which intelligence services?
All the major intelligence. It doesn't matter which intelligence service.
Well, no, it does. Because I mean...
No, let's get to the point first, stranger, and then we can talk about that after.
Mate, I'll just be quiet. You fill your boots.
They'll all come to Europe through migration, whether it's economic migration or asylum seeking. They all get their British, German passports, European passports. And
how long does that take?
I don't know how long exactly.
I do.
Doesn't matter, does it? Do we know? Go on then, tell us.
7 years minimum, with quite a lot of restrictions in place.
Right, okay. So they get their passport, and then they can move around Europe freely. These terrorist fighters, yeah?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah? Okay, and then...
Why won't they be able to come to Britain?
Well, because they won't have a European passport, will they?
So we're not going to have any tourists anymore?
Of course we have tourists, but they won't be able to get in the country as easily as the gentleman said on the call earlier, while he's breezing through the queue of the EU queue.
No, but that's a queue, mate. That's not security that turns people away. A queue is when you wait a bit longer to get to the front. So if I've got a German...
You can't ignore the fact that...
Oh, sweetheart, it's not a fact. Let's just examine what you've said, Nikki. Nothing more, nothing less, OK? You think that by us withdrawing from the European Union and having blue passports, it's going to be harder for German people to come here on holiday?
No, it's going to be harder for terrorists that are disguised to come here and cause terrorist attacks.
So they come to the border and tell us that they're terrorists, do they?
Yeah, right, very funny. Look, put it this way, James. You've got a guy that commits a terrorist attack in Germany and crosses 2 countries in 4 days through the freedom of movement. Is that not ridiculous?
That's through Schengen. It's not quite the same as freedom of movement, but that's not the point you rang in with. The point you rang in with was that 1 million people who've been housed or homed in Germany, and in 7 years' time, some of them will be applying for European Union passports. Nicky, mate, you know that you've made a fool of yourself. It's not my fault. You've suggested that by pulling out of the European Union, it's going to be harder for European people to come here on holiday.
James, the freedom of movement, they'll be able to settle in any country that is represent the freedom of movement, which it would have been our country until we left the EU.
So now you're worried about people coming here to work, because you were supposed to be worried about terrorists.
Terrorists settling in the UK have got no right to be here.
Mate, they're not going to be stopped from coming in unless they've already committed acts of terror, in which case they'll either be dead or in jail. What you've got is someone with a European Union passport. When did you last go on holiday, Nicky?
Last year.
Where did you go?
Spain.
Right, and what did you show to get out of this country and into that one?
Well, you're talking so condescending. There's no need to be like that, is there, James?
There really is, because I'm not breaking through to you by being polite. So you've got a passport in your hand, you used it to go to Spain. Now imagine somebody with a Spanish passport wants to come here. What's going to happen?
James, listen, you can carry on having your breakdown over leaving the EU, but we're leaving the EU, get over it, and we'll all be fine.
Yes,
right?
OK.
You'll be much happier
Are you going to be able to answer any of my questions, do you think, about...
I've just told you why I think it's a good idea we get our passport back, and that's the end of the story. All right,
Nicky, mate, slam the phone down now and then do a lap of honour. That's the fashion today. Go on, mate.
I'm not going to slam the phone down.
Oh, good. Then you'll answer my question. How are you going to tell when somebody comes here on holiday that they're planning a terror attack?
How are you going to enjoy your Christmas dinner when you're sitting there still worried about us leaving the EU, James? You're going to have a nice Christmas. Forget about the EU just for one day and enjoy your Christmas day.
You know you rang in to talk about it. There's a pattern emerging here. Mirror, reflection, horror. 11:45. I'm going to say one thing seriously, because obviously I think it's perfectly possible that people like Nicky just before the break and your man in Merthyr, I think they might go away not fully aware of how ridiculous they've sounded. But an awful lot of people listening who also describe themselves as leavers do think they sounded stupid and ridiculous. I think you're much, much worse than them. If you're sending me cowardly text messages claiming that somehow we only let on stupid people to argue while you're not ringing in yourself, you're pathetic. At least these people who I believe are victims of a con, at least they've got the guts to describe their position and to justify their beliefs, and that's why it's such a horrible experience for them when they realise how wrong they are. But to sit there and claim that somehow they are specially selected for their stupidity is both a definition of condescension and a very distillation of cowardice. So oddly, although they both went away very cross, I'm a lot more what would the word be, sympathetic to them than I am to the kind of people who sit there being rude about them while claiming to be on the same side of the argument that you haven't got the guts to try to make, because you know what will happen when you do. Exactly the same thing will happen. Oh my God, all of my points have fallen apart. I clearly have no idea what's going on. You lost, get over it, slam down the phone. You'd be exactly the same as them. So when you text in and tweet about, in your condescending, sneery way, about how these people can't string a sentence together and they only choose the stupid ones, you really are pathetic. Merry Christmas, though. 11:48 is the time. Rob's in Nice, in France. Rob, blue passports. Thank the Lord. Thank everything that's holy. We've got our country back.
Indeed. Yeah, hi, James. Yes, I'm British. I live in France. But oddly, driving into the office and hearing that blue passports are coming back in a few years' time was one of the bright spots of the day. I mean, it's not the most important thing on earth, but...
How old are you?
I lose my Britishness. 50.
So did you ever have one?
Oh, absolutely. And I not only had one, but I travelled with it when it was cancelled because I had a US visa in it for about 8 years, and I had a pink one.
And you will feel different with a blue passport in your pocket compared to a burgundy one?
Well, I'm well down the road of getting a French passport, obviously, if I lived down here. And I would have, had I had a vote, I'd have definitely voted to remain, but, life happens. So
what are we describing here?
I'm going to secure my European citizenship by getting a French passport, but that does do away with the British element of my heritage. So it's like an onion skin. At my core, I come from some village, some family, some region of England or Britain. And that element of Britishness, I kind of, it's nice. I like the difference of the British passport versus all the others.
I think possibly I could.
Germans or Americans in a passport line, you could see they're different passports. I find it kind of cute. The fact some are European or not, I haven't a clue what the real...
I can't get a word in edgeways, Rob.
Okay, then talk on.
Thank you. I think I could probably be a bit like you. I could see it as a kind of... It'd be a bit like if Woolworths reopened.
No, I'm not going to... It's not like... It's an element of the construction of my... I am proud to be British. I live in Europe. I describe myself as a Brit in Europe. When I'm in America, I describe myself as a European. And it's an element. It's a small element of my nationality. My nationality...
What did you think when you heard Johnny describing it as light grey and then slightly less light grey?
I'm not entirely sure I followed the logic. I mean,
He's colourblind.
I detest the venom of some of the people who are phoning in, and that aspect of, let's say, Englishness, I've detached myself from. I no longer describe myself as English. I describe myself as British down here, because the French see the English as a particularly sort of, as a group of venomous English right now. But the people I work with and live with here in Europe and in the south of France, they've got a soft spot for, Britain. We've been fighting with each other for a few hundred years. We'll probably continue to do so. But it's an element of my nationality. Just because I get a French passport, there's no way that's replacing...
No, but that's where I hear you contradicting yourself, because I will be British even if they tell me that I'm not. Something as utterly immaterial as the colour of my passport impacts upon my sense of Britishness not a jot. And so it's weird that you describe it as being an intrinsic, inviolate part of you, and yet it is something so fragile that it can be influenced by the colour of a document in your pocket.
So if I was using the word intrinsic and inviolable, that would be with respect to it being a British...
Well, what would you use then when you talk about your sense of Britishness as being so permanent? Then can I use that word? I don't know. I don't want to.
No. I mean, maybe the colour isn't the hot point. The hot point is...
But that is what we're talking about.
Different. I agree, but it's the passport is different. It happens to be blue, but the whole layout, the format. I enjoyed having something which is particularly British. Now, I agree with the earlier comments about some of the words about.
I don't really understand you. I know, and we're not obviously going to part on quite the same terms as some of my previous callers, but I don't understand what you think you're telling me, and I'm almost sure that's my fault. But it is going to make you feel different somehow.
I have an emotional affinity to the old style of passport.
But you're not getting the old style of passport. You're getting a brand new passport that will be a similar colour to one that we stopped using 30 years ago.
Yes, and which I won't be allowed to travel on because I have to use a French one when I enter.
I'm even more confused, Rob. I'm even more confused now.
It's a symbol. It is purely...
A symbol of what?
It's a symbol of the heritage that I came from.
Oh, but it was a different colour 80 years ago.
I wasn't around 80 years ago. I mean, you're asking me...
Well, no, but you weren't... the heritage that you came from is the very definition of things that you weren't around for, Rob.
Yeah.
So you just said it's a symbol of the heritage that I came from. So it was a different colour 80 years ago. That's the heritage that you came from as well.
I think the point...
I think you're just nostalgic, are you?
Well, that's probably a good word.
Yeah, which is why it's a bit like hoping Woolworths would reopen, which I completely agree with. I'd love Woolworths to reopen. And no, hand on heart, I'm more... Yeah, I'd be more excited about Woolworths reopening than I could ever be about the colour of my passport. But good luck, and I hope your French citizenship comes through soon. Paul's in Bedfordshire. Paul, what would you like to say?
Well, first of all, I'd say £50 billion for a different colour passport. I hope everyone's proud of themselves.
Yeah, well.
What I'd like to say is
it's not just the passport, mate. There's all the other stuff.
No, well, I suppose so.
Yeah.
What I find frustrating is those people who voted leave, but seem to be able to apply for a second passport, for a second European passport. So let's get this right. They voted to leave, but just in case, they want to have access to their freedom of movement across Europe. Now, unfortunately for me, I'm stuck with a British passport. My ancestry does not allow me to get any second passport.
Yeah.
So I won't have that free access. But they voted leave, but they've got this ability to move across Europe freely. I say that anyone who voted leave should not be allowed to have a second passport.
Yeah, but it's a secret ballot, mate. It's a secret ballot, so there's no way... How are we going to police it? Anyway, can't you just... You heard Nicky in Hornchurch. It's going to stop terrorists from coming here on holiday.
I know what you're saying, but you see my point. It seems gross hypocrisy to be able to say, well, I'm going to force everyone else into this. Anybody who can't have a second passport.
I've got no argument with you, but I'm not a Brexiter, so I can't actually endorse an idea that... No, I know you're not, but you're sounding like one because you think it would be possible to do something that's impossible. How are we going to know how people voted?
I don't think it's possible to do it. I just think it's...
It'd be natural justice.
natural justice. I think it's sad that these people who voted to leave seem to think of themselves first and seem to think, well, OK, it's OK for me to get an Italian.
There is a lot of that about. I don't know that the last fella was. I thought that's what he was doing at first, but I'm still a bit.
The earlier guy who had a house in Italy, he seemed to be more. You know, I've got a house in Italy. It's all right for me to get a second passport, and I won't have.
But he was the fellow who was simultaneously saying, "I've got an Irish passport, so I'll be all right," but.
Exactly.
But the British passport is going to be exactly the same as it was before. I remember him.
You can get an Irish passport or not. I don't know. You might be able to. Unfortunately,
I could adopt you. I'll adopt you. I'll get an Irish passport, which oddly I'm entitled to because I'm adopted, and then I could adopt you, and you'd be entitled to get an Irish passport. How old are you?
Well, that'd be great. I'm 50.
Oh, that might be tricky.
51.
That might be tricky. That might be tricky, Paul, given that you were 6 when I was born. Leave it with me, mate. In the spirit of Brexit, if we can't work out a way that a 45-year-old fella can adopt a 51-year-old bloke, then, frankly, I'm ashamed to be British, Paul.
All right, cheers. Thanks for your time.
Mind how you go. Chris is in Blackheath. Chris, what have we got?
James, please, whatever you do not leave BBC. I don't know what I'd do without you.
It's all right. I'd come round on Fridays and have a cup of tea with you. We'd be okay if I move on to
James.
No.
I need more than Friday. I need Monday to Friday, James. When you go on holiday, I get depressed. I go into deep depression.
So does my wife.
I have to tell you. James, I've got to tell you this. It's arrested development. Brexit is arrested development. Woke up this morning, heard on the radio, heard Steve Allen, and then Nick Ferrari turned around saying, "Oh, we've got a blue passport." It's arrested development. I have to say this.
Don't be rude about my friends, okay? I know you're not being, but I sense I should probably warn you at this point not to be, because also it's an age issue as well. I think for older people there is, as Rob described, nostalgically, there is a sort of sense that, it'll be like the good old days, and it doesn't stand up to much scrutiny, but... Oh, I don't know.
Do you remember when do you remember, like, Nigel Farage said, make Britain great again? He did, and that's where... And he did say that originally, make Britain great again. But some of the things that made...
That's quite... Are you sure? You said that's quite unpatriotic. Because Britain is already great, isn't it?
Yeah, but James, some of the things that made Britain great back in the old days would be abhorrent today. The thing is, Muslims died, Indians died, black people died in World War I and II, fighting for Britain.
This is true. Okay? A lot of Polish Spitfire pilots.
Yeah. We need to bear in mind that
we're supposed to be talking about blue passports, not the First World War.
James, you know what?
Chris.
My passport is beautiful. Do you know what? And I'm lucky I've just renewed it. So I'm going to have my passport for 10 years, and hopefully by that time Brexit will not happen.
In 10 years, we're going to have the opposite of the Woodstock effect. You know how everybody was at Woodstock, if you ask them, if they're that big music festival in the 60s. If everyone who says they were at Woodstock was at Woodstock, it would have sunk America. Same with Spike Island for our generation. I spent a couple of years claiming to have been at the Stone Roses concert at Spike Island until reality intervened and somebody pointed out I think I was at boarding school at the time. So in 10 years' time, Brexit will be the opposite of that. There'll only be 3 people left who admit to having voted for it.
James, a few good men, James. You know, when Jack Nicholson... you've got your Ray Liotta moment.
Yeah.
If they build it, it will come.
Yeah.
With a few good men, they cannot handle the truth.
That was Ferraris. Nick used to have that on speed dial. He used to have that. You can't handle the truth. You might be right. There certainly seems to be a little bit of difficulty digesting the truth in some quarters today. But the one thing I've said today that I would absolutely, is a bridge I would die on, is the pathetic cowardice of people that claim that the people who ring in are somehow selected, and that's why they end up sounding so ridiculous. 2 things. Number 1, most of the time they don't realise that they've sounded ridiculous. Number 2, they're worth 20 of you simply by having the courage of their convictions, however cretinous those convictions turn out to be. Phones are still full. What's going on? Haven't you had enough yet? Haven't you had enough yet? Honestly. Should we squeeze in Darren in Orpington and then have a rethink after 12? Darren in Orpington, say something brilliant.
Good morning, James.
Hello.
Happy Christmas.
Same to you, mate.
Rightio. I will be missing, when it goes, my red passport. I've only ever known that. Just coming from the other side, that's all I've known.
Same
I've only travelled on the red one. I'm not old enough to have travelled on the whatever colour it was, the old blue.
Blue or black. There seems to be some confusion.
There you go. So I want to keep the red one.
Yes.
I wanted to stay in Europe anyway. I didn't want to upset the apple cart. My wife works for an Austrian bank. We was doing okay, thank you very much. So why upset the apple cart? And one thing I ask you, James, I'm not having a pop, honestly.
No, that's all right. Go on.
You talk very on about Brexit a lot these days, and I'm on side. It's a dark.
We're going to run out of time. Quick, give me the question.
But why couldn't you have campaigned as hard before, with your knowledge, which is probably better than mine?
No, it wasn't.
Before,
that is a fair question, and the answer is I knew nothing about the European Union. I knew more than most Brexiters, but in the great scheme of things, I knew absolutely nothing. And only since the vote have I started finding out all the stuff that, you're quite right, should have been in the public field long before the referendum. But you can't blame me for that, can you? Oh, go on then. Yes, you can. It's Christmas. I look forward, says Mark in Leatherhead, to feeling so superior as I stand queuing while European Union citizens fly past me at most customs posts. Me too. I can't wait. We continue with this conversation. Oddly, we could actually carry on with it all day. It's really weird because the programme this year obviously has become something of a sanctuary for the rational, those of us who feel utterly befuddled by the madness that's gripped populations on both sides of the Atlantic and insist, however unfashionable it may be, on pointing out simple truths and facts. But equally, people who hate the truths and facts have become addicted to it as well. It's a very strange... I don't want to overanalyse it because I might break it if I do, but it's really quite bizarre, and that's what gives me hope. So if you are in the kind of slam down the phone, you lost, get over it, and then or you've fallen for these sort of weird lines about Syrians in Germany somehow not being able to come here if we're not in the European Union anymore, I feel no malice towards you. I hope you realise that, but I do have some hope that the reason why you keep listening is because even you have some hope somewhere inside that eventually the penny will drop. You can't keep hearing evidence upon evidence upon evidence and seeing the people that persuaded you to do this tying themselves in hypocritical knots, undertaking reverse ferrets and U-turns, saying the opposite of what they said at the time. There are people who said, well, we could be like Norway or Switzerland, now denying that they ever said anything of the sort, despite the fact that we've got the tapes. I think the reason why you listen is because you are sort of very, 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 very early, in the very early stages of admitting you were wrong. So I'm going to keep you company for at least another year. 0345 6060 973 is the number to call if you can tell me, with a straight face, why the colour of your passport is somehow a victory. Given that, I'm 99% sure, and this in a way is peak Brexit, because I'm pretty sure I'm right. I haven't actually looked it up yet. But the fella in Aberystwyth earlier who had, I'm pretty sure we could have kept a blue passport all along. But, of course, the whole point of Brexit, as with freedom of movement, as with the 3 months to find a job, all of the things that are actually factual got trumped by the things that weren't, like the bus. So I'm pretty sure it could have been blue all along, but the people today describing it as some sort of victory are simultaneously lying to you. So this is proof that we've got our country back. Although I'm struggling to find anybody of that ilk who can sort of do it with a straight face. There is that simultaneous knowledge that you've been lied to. There was nothing to stop us. We went Burgundy for functional reasons, to improve the experience of travelling to foreign countries, to make it easier and more visually identifiable. Which queue am I supposed to be in? Oh, that's an EU passport. You go in that short queue there with the really quick turnover. What have you got there? Oh, that's blue as well. Oh, you've got a blue one. You must be Syrian. You go over there. So it was just for ease. And so what we've done is we've voted to make travelling much less easy. We've voted to make it harder. A deal. And they know that when they're telling you that this is somehow a celebration, this is somehow a victory. They know that it's not true. It could always have stayed blue. But it was in our interests to go burgundy. And if you had to sum up Brexit in a sentence, what would you describe it as? Yep. Persuading people to vote against their own interests. Because, fish. 8 minutes after 12 is the time. Not even fish anymore, but passports. Blue passports. It really matters. So, the other story I'm keen to talk about, although I'm not going to lie to you, you're going to struggle to get through. It's ridiculous. Is the one about iPhones and an admission from Apple that they do secretly reduce the speed of some iPhones. I'm fascinated when my iPhone starts going a bit funny by whether or not it's built in or not. Do you know what I mean? Because I've had mine now for, I think it's just come out of guarantee and it's just started turning itself off when the battery's on 15%. And I don't care. frankly, how much evidence you provide to the contrary. I'm going to be the Brexiter in this one. I refuse to believe that that's not deliberate. I refuse to believe that they're not somehow aware of the fact that I've just come out of warranty and therefore the battery starts conking out when there's still 15% left in the tank. What else would you put on that list? Well, the speed of it slows down. So I've got two questions, really. One is about obsolescence, built-in obsolescence. Why am I doing this if no one can get through because everyone still wants to talk about Brexit? It's the story of my life. Can we try and keep at least one phone line free? So built-in obsolescence. Is it a thing? Is it just me being a little bit Brexity, thinking that things were better in the olden days? Or am I right when I say that if you bought something big, you wouldn't replace it? TVs, we only had one TV throughout my entire childhood. Now you've got to get the new one. The new one's curved, apparently. Do you see what I mean? Why do you need another iPhone? I bet the first phone you ever bought would still work. What's happened to us? Just touch on that for me. I feel like I'm sort of just scratching at the surface of a door. I'm nowhere near the handle. But there is some sort of... what's the word I want to use? Not conspiracy, that's culture. We've had a cultural change with regard to ownership. We have to keep buying new stuff. And the manufacturers, who need perpetual growth to keep the shareholders happy, the last thing they want is for us to be using the same phone 2 years from now that we were using 2 years ago. So how plausible is it that everything from fridges through to phones is now built in a way that accommodates obsolescence? Am I making any sense at all? Probably a little bit more sense than the pro-blue passport callers we've had today, but frankly, that's hardly a compliment. 10 minutes after 12 is the time. So ideally, you'll get through. Looking at the screen at the moment, you won't. That's my problem. I'll deal with it. Maybe if I rattle through all the passport calls, I'll have an empty switchboard in time to get some calls on about iPhones and built-in obsolescence. Also, it means I haven't had a round robin. Can we get one in before the end of the year? If you've received one of those missives that details in excruciating detail everything from the state of Uncle Bob's bunions right through to this year's courgette crop. 0345 6060 973 is the number you need if you want to read out a couple of the choicest morsels. 0345 6060 973. But back to the fast ports. Rory's in Scotland near Aberdeen. Rory, what have you got? What would you like to say?
Well, I'm not a Brexiter myself, but I'm Scottish. I'd also say I'm British, but I actually have an Irish passport because my parents are Irish, and I'm just curious as to why you need a passport to actually feel a nationality.
So am I.
I definitely feel British.
So am I. Very curious. So, in fact, if people want to talk to me about national identity as opposed to passports this hour, they're more than welcome to if they can get through. So you hear conversations like the one you've been listening to today, and it's almost as if you're hearing a foreign language. It's such it's a vocabulary that makes no sense to you.
Well, almost. There have been occasional, very small occasions, because I have an Irish passport, and sometimes I've gone on things like trips with students and so on, that when you get to the airport, you get your passports out and everyone goes, oh, you've got a different passport. That's kind of interesting. And you have like that brief moment of you're the centre of attention, or it's kind of, you have this thing of interest to talk about.
Yes.
And that's kind of okay, I guess.
But it's not. It's not a reason to, cut your arm off or spend £50 billion.
Not at all. No.
Who do you cheer for in the rugby? Who do you cheer for in the rugby?
Usually Scotland, because they're the underdogs, and the Scottish fans are the most discerning fans in the world because they just have to deal with disappointment so often. But
you should try supporting Kidderminster Harriers, pal.
I will not be trying that. Thanks.
We'd make you more than welcome. What about in other areas? Do you cheer for England ever?
Never.
So you're British. I'm
sorry. I'm very sorry.
No. I'm interested because what I'm pointing out is that you do have a sense of nationality.
Yeah, but there's more. It's a complicated issue.
Yes.
Yeah.
A lot more complicated than the colour of a passport, which is kind of the point. Can you understand the sentiment that somehow the colour of the passport will make people feel more British?
Well, if I sit by myself and I think really, really hard, and I don't let anyone talk to me, and I don't listen to anything, I can get about 3% of the way there, which is progress, but it's not enough.
No, it's a little bit further than me. I mean, I do the opposite. I invite people to bombard me with explanations as to how the colour of their passport can make them feel more British, but everyone I listen to makes me less understanding of what it is they think they're describing. I cannot imagine any circumstance at all in which my sense of self, my sense of belonging, my sense of identity, my sense of heritage, my sense of home could be affected by changing the colour of anything, whether it was the colour of my passport or the colour of my house. It's just bonkers.
I can't help you there, I'm sorry. It's
Who can? Where can I go, Rory? Who can help me? Where can we go? Because, I mean, the other thing you've got is this simultaneous lie, this notion that, yes, finally, a Brexit victory. We can now change our passports to a colour we could have changed them to all along, even when we were in the European Union. How do you unpick that, mate?
Well, to be honest, I think it's almost a good thing, because if you have Brexiteers cheering for the government changing the colour of the passports, I'd rather have them supporting that than supporting demolishing the Human Rights Act or anything like that.
They're so busy dealing with Brexit, they can't go around persecuting disabled people.
Oh, they can totally do that, but at least it's an issue that people can point to and kind of, feel kind of some humanity and some kind of connection with decency, whereas if Brexit becomes all about just repealing all these EU regulations and laws...
Well, it's not going to. We're cutting and pasting them all into our own statute book. Again, it's this weird dichotomy of claim and reality, fact and fiction. We'll be making our own laws. What's the first thing we're going to do? Well, we're going to hopefully just transpose. Cut and paste is the phrase that they've used. Everything that is... Otherwise, we won't be able to trade with them. It's just divergence and regulation. You've got Irish heritage. You're probably more across that side of things than I am. It's at every single turn you have people saying things that they know aren't true. You have to presume they know they're not true, and people cheering them along. It's quite fascinating.
It's genuinely amazing, but I think there's a diversity in the Brexit crowd, which you can use that kind of issue to actually split up that as a voting bloc or whatever, and just where was I even going?
No, I think I know where you were going. Is that they're disparate with each other now? You can't find two leavers who agree about what they voted for.
Well, exactly. But if you have issues like I don't know why I'm trying to defend this, but if you can point to an issue... Because I'm so good at my job, Rory. I don't know why I'm trying to defend it.
Don't worry, shall I put you out of your misery? I don't know why you are either. I just really like talking to you, mate, to be honest. You sound like a really top fella. You sound like a top fella. I can't say any fairer than that. That's why the conversation carried on for so long. I just really liked you. All right, how mad does this sound? Here's what we should do when we've left the European Union. We should start manufacturing stuff that lasts for ages instead of stuff that needs replacing. I know it'll all go a little bit Baker-light and a little bit black and white, but we should all drive around in nice, simple, functional cars that don't need replacing every 5 years and that we can then pass on to our children so they can have a little run around. Same with fridges. We might not be keeping up to date with all the latest technologies, but our fridges will last for 30 years. We should turn Britain into a land of permanence. That will distinguish us from the rest of the world, and it will allow us to step back from the crazy consumerism that I think is probably picking our pockets. Just a thought on the story involving iPhone admitting that their batteries get less, but that their phones slow down when the batteries are getting old. Well, you know what the story is. It's a form of built-in obsolescence, I think. I'm just wondering whether or not... Actually, quite a few of you have got a better understanding of this than I have. Apparently, Jacques Peretti made a film about it. I love his work, which is... Yeah, saying exactly the same thing. Adam Curtis has done it as well, too. Brilliant filmmakers, brilliant journalists. So this idea, do we know... Does anyone have anything clever to say? This is going to be my new motto in the new year. Has anybody got anything clever to say about this subject? 0345 6060 973. Built-in obsolescence. And we're still talking about passports. Why? Because I've played a big trick on you in conjunction with the Sun newspaper. I've spent the whole morning, and this was done in cahoots with Mr. Murdoch himself, rang me last night. The idea was we'd test just how dopey Brexiters are by talking about blue passports coming back, when in fact they were black all along. And you've all fallen for it. I think it's very rude, actually, of Mr. Murdoch to treat Sun readers with such derision. I'm joking slightly. A lot of people are getting in touch saying the passport was never blue. I've got a feeling they're right. I can remember my dad's passport. because he had it handy all the time. I heard Nick earlier saying that he had his passport on his person all the time when he was a newspaper journalist. It was similar for my old man. It was black, wasn't it? Why are we all talking about blue passports? They were black all along, I think. Azita is in Newcastle. Azita, what can I do for you?
Hi, James. Hope you're well.
Very well. What a lovely name.
Thank you. I was just ringing about the iPhone issue.
Oh, yes.
I went to Apple yesterday for battery problems that I was encountering, and the technician said that it passed its 2-year life.
How far past its 2 year? How far past?
Like, just 2 years, pretty much.
Shut the front door. So you've literally just you've just come out of warranty.
Yeah, just out of warranty. So she said it would have cost £175 to get the battery replaced because the screen was cracked a bit, so that would need to get replaced for the battery to get replaced.
Right.
So I just feel like there's no incentive to keep your phone to like get it repaired. The generation of getting things fixed is gone.
Why has it,
So
though?
I just feel like I might.
It cost you £1,000 for it. Yeah, it's £1,000 for a new phone.
But I pay monthly anyway, so.
So you need someone to come up with a scheme where you could pay for the repairs monthly, you see?
Or just like cheaper incentives just to get your phone fixed. I just don't think it should be that expensive.
I don't quite... I mean, listen, I'm the same as you, all right? I would be exactly the same as you. But when I listen to you making the argument, you're saying, oh, no, I'd rather buy a new one for £1,000 than spend £175 on getting my perfectly adequate old one fixed. That's nuts, isn't it? When I say it back to you, that's £725 up the spout for nothing.
Yeah, that's true, but...
But you still want a new one. You still want a new one.
Have a new one, yeah.
Why do you need a new... How old are you? Do you mind me asking?
21.
21. Why do you need a new phone?
Well, I don't actually need a new one.
Why do you want a new phone?
Because the battery's broken on mine.
But then I can fix it for £175. I'll save you £725.
Yeah, that's true, to be fair.
I'm the same. Why are we like this? It's like we've been brainwashed.
I know.
It's quite nice talking about brainwashing without talking about Brexit. But we can't keep that up forever. Adam's in Brighton. Adam, what have you got? Thank you, Azita. What a lovely call. What would you like to say, Adam?
Hello, James. Merry Christmas.
Same to you, my friend. Same to you. Ho, ho, ho.
I just wanted a bit of practical advice, and I hope this can help. I think this also conflates the two subjects. While I've been waiting on the phone, I've realised that we can put the two together, because your red passport is now obsolete.
Yes, soon to be, very soon.
Soon to be obsolete, and it's being replaced with a new one.
Yes.
My question is, will it come with practical information, any instructions? Because if it clearly means so much to people to have this, how do we actually demonstrate it? Because my passport, and I suspect this is the same for loads of people, spends the vast majority of its life in the drawer, except for the exciting time when the family goes on holiday. And the only person who actually gets to see it is the slightly grumpy man behind the window.
Yes.
When we arrive at the foreign destination, I get it out of my pocket because it's valuable, and you mustn't, leave them or be careless with your passport. So you guard them, and then you show it to that man. So how does it work practically, and how do we display our pride in our newfound blue passports? Do we wear them?
Yes, we do.
On our heads?
No. Don't be stupid. We wear them around our necks.
Oh, I was thinking about a hat.
No, that's silly. What if it rains?
Oh, yeah.
No, you need to
get when it rains on holiday.
You get a plastic wallet. We're not going on holiday to foreign countries anymore. You're going to be going on holiday to Western Supermare, but with a passport, just because it makes you feel more British. And you wear it what's it called? Oh, they've got a name. My kids are obsessed with them. Whenever I go to a gig, they always want me to bring them back. They wear them around your neck like a laminate, but it's got a special name. I can't remember. Lanyard. A lanyard is what we want, Adam.
A Ray Liotta for that?
No, you do not get a Ray Liotta for that, you silly man. Of course you don't. It was my joke. Did you say lanyard?
I said lanyard.
Oh, Axel said it at the same time in my other ear. The guy was like stereo. It was amazing. So we get a lanyard. And also, presumably, and they haven't explained this to me yet, there's a thing inside that you press to sort of activate your Britishness.
Oh, theme tune.
Yeah, like a theme tune, yes. You sort of press it like those cards that we used to have with a little... So you open up your passport, it starts playing Jerusalem, and you have this sort of swell of patriotic pride, and you go and sort of slap a Frenchman.
I want one now.
Yeah, so do I. See, it just takes a bit of effort, Adam. You and me, between us, we could rule the world. 27 after 12. Marco is in Cambridge. That's a suspiciously foreign name. I suspect you want to talk about iPhones.
Yes, I would just like to make one comment about the lady who called in just before. 2 words, status symbol. You can buy a phone with just as large a battery as the new iPhone for about half the price, just as functional. Anyways, lithium-ion batteries, part of the hardware in mobile devices, are probably the first thing to degrade in a mobile device.
Yeah.
Now, you know, iPhones don't even have expandable storage, let alone replaceable batteries. So this is the kind of thing where built-in obsolescence is just engineered into it no matter what.
We're mugs, right? We're mugs, but there's nothing we can do about it.
Well, there is. Just buy an Android. I don't want to, like, plug other companies, but, you know, there is...
Do Androids last? So iPhone is just a triumph of marketing, is it, in your view?
To some extent, yeah. I mean, they have done some engineering feats in the past, but overall, it is just a brand, yeah.
I remember when I first started doing this job, when you were still in short trousers, Marco, I remember that everybody admitted they only really used their computers for emailing and... I'm doing a Damien Green. No one used it for anything else, and yet they would always buy a new computer. They'd just sort of go out and drop $2,000 on an iMac, and I'd say, "What do you do on it? Do you write programs? Do you build architecture type stuff?" So no, mostly I just send emails and do a Damien Green.
Well, I mean, it's too short a time to go into Western society and consumerism.
There you go. You've forgotten what show you're listening to. We've always got time to go into Western society and consumerism between 10 and 1 on weekdays on LBC, Marco. Unfortunately, not now, because we're late for the news. Would you like to say anything about Brexit before you go?
You cannot eat your cake and have it.
Get thee behind me, traitor. It's 12:30. Of course you can. It's called... Is it something about fish and passports? Oh, I've got half an hour left together this year. I won't be with you again until January the 2nd. I don't know how you're going to cope. If you have got a round robin in the interim, we could just squeeze it in. Have we got one yet? I've got all my phone lines. Why are all the phone lines full? Haven't people got last-minute Christmas shopping to do? A little bit more on built-in obsolescence and a little bit more on blue passports. Not a single person has managed to explain, I would argue, coherently, why this is news, let alone why this is good news. Especially when you put in the parentheses afterwards. We could have kept blue ones or black ones all along. We just didn't, because it makes our lives easier to have burgundy ones. What have you voted for? Harder life. When do you want it? Now. I hope history records that I added that to the national vocabulary. Get downstairs now. Stop. I know what you're doing in your room, you dirty little beggar. Stop doing a Damien. Come down here and wash the dishes. 33 minutes after 12 is the time. Bit more Brexit, bit more built-in obsolescence, hopefully a round robin, but my phones are my enemy today. I can't free up a phone. As soon as I finish speaking to someone else grabs it. 0345 606 0973 is the number to call. This is funny, from Richard, who's in Southend. James, he says, my iPhone 5 is like Trigger's broom. It's had 3 batteries, 2 charging ports, many screens, 1 microphone, 2 new home buttons, and a partridge at no. It's 5 years old. It's been dropped from 24 foot. It's been in a bucket of water many times. I am a window cleaner. Despite all of the above, the repairs have cost about 350 quid, but my contract is now only 14 quid a month, and for that I get 15 gigs of data and unlimited everything else. Blimey, really? I will never change it, because the same repairs on an iPhone 6 would be about 800 quid and on an iPhone 7 about 1,500. I know this because my wife and kids have them, so you're paying for them anyway, but still, at least you're not paying for your own. And this cheered me up. This brought a Christmassy glow to my chilly heart. Hi, James. Another James here. I'm working away in a lab in Cambridge, and your gag about going on holidays in Western Supermare with a British passport made me laugh uncontrollably and mess up one of my really important samples. It was worth it, though, and I shall blame it on the EU. Have a good Christmas. Steve is in Bristol. Steve, what have you got?
Hello, James.
Hello, Steve.
I think it's all about the passport thing. I think it's all about, because people are, whatever they voted for, are unsure what may or may not happen. I suppose for the people who voted for leave, or for the people who who may have voted for Remain but now believe we should go, I think
there aren't any people like that.
At least, yeah, I voted Remain, and now I
don't believe you.
To go.
Don't believe you.
Oh, I did. I used to live in Switzerland for many years, and I wasn't sure what to do. I stood and sat in the voting place, and I took for about another 10 minutes then. In the end,
I can't really make out what you're saying. I'm not sure whether it's because it's so confusing or because the phone line's so bad.
Can you hear me now?
I can, but then it got a weird noise in the middle of it. What did you do then to make it better?
I moved it slightly nearer my mouth. It may have been...
It's good work there. Yeah, no, do you know what? I think on reflection, I do believe that you now support Brexit.
Yeah, okay, then, yeah. Oh, nice, yeah.
I just moved my phone, the mouthpiece nearer my mouth. Well done.
Yeah, it does help, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So anyway, I think democracy should be seen to be done, and I think all it means is the passport thing. It just means that it's a sign, at least a sign, that we will Brexit.
Yes.
So it's not so much about the colour, but the two words have to go, European Union, because that's what people voted for. But it doesn't make anyone particularly happy or anything. It's the physical thing. It's just a sign, a message, so to speak, that at least we'll leave.
Yes.
How we leave, we still don't know. That's all.
Okay. If we don't know how we're leaving, why are you so keen to do it?
How we leave it? Well, I mean, I think people who voted to leave, or me now, I want us to leave, it was pretty...
But you just said you don't know what you voted for.
No, I said people don't know what's going to happen. I think
so don't know how we're going to leave, but you want it to happen.
Yeah,
you don't know what's going to happen.
We've got a parliament full of, not full, but lots of... You're winding me up.
So just to clarify, I'm not winding you up. I'm just holding up a mirror, because what you just said is I don't know what's going to happen, but I really want it to happen.
Okay, well, let me... did I say that?
Yeah.
I said that.
Well, yeah.
Okay, well, the point being, a lot of people voted to leave.
Yeah.
But we now have a parliament or lots of people who don't want us to leave, and so it's not clear.
We had that all along.
What's going to happen? Because there's people, for instance, the BBC, not so much LBC, because you've put you're a Remainer, and whereas your mate Nigel Farage would be a Leaver, of course. So the LBC presenters.
Mate, what are you talking about?
I'm saying that the sign. It's a sign.
All right, it's a sign. Let's leave it there. So it's a sign that we're going to leave, and we don't know what's going to happen, but we really want it to happen.
I want to listen, you kidding Minster aria boy.
Merry Christmas.
And you,
12:37. Holy moly. Same number of votes as you. Judith in Epsom. Judith, what have you got?
I've got a spoof round robin.
Do we need spoofs? Aren't some things beyond parody? Like Michael Gove joking the other day that we need to be more patriotic about cheese.
The thing is, I find it very funny because I know the family that's been talked about.
Okay. So this is a thing taking the mickey out of the thing that we take the mickey out of.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's give it a whirl. Let's roll the dice, Judith. What can you tell us?
Okay, what it is, it's a family of 5, the parents and 3 children.
Yes.
I'll just give you a little bit of background to each of them. Lisa loves shopping, and she was an adolescent when this was written. And what they've said is Lisa has come on in leaps and bounds since she took the part-time job on Saturdays. It's a wonder to us how she makes the money she earns go so far, and how she carries the stuff under her anorak on the way home without dropping a thing is a constant source of amazement. Moving on to the
It's not working for me.
Okay, fair dues.
No, well, I mean, I don't want to sound ungrateful because you're all I've got, Judith. Her round robins are very thin on the ground this year, but I don't know these people, so it's an in-joke, whereas the best jokes are the ones where none of us know them, but the details of their life are so banal that we all find it quite endearingly funny.
But I'm a disappointing all you've got, aren't I?
Well, it's a bit like getting socks for Christmas, Judith. I'm not going to lie to you.
No, okay, no problem.
You'll always be socks. You'll always be my Christmas socks.
Oh no, I'm never calling again.
Every time I see your name on the board, my feet will warm up.
I trust you to remember that. Okay.
God bless. Merry Christmas. I'm sorry. I was right though, wasn't I? It wasn't working for me. There's no way of finding out. You have to suck it and see. But I just spat it out again. Paul's in Whitechapel. Paul, I've no idea what you phoned in for, and I don't frankly care. I just want to hear your voice.
Hi, James.
Hello, Paul.
Guys, I'm really quite nervous, but...
What are you nervous about? Come off it.
Just, a million listeners. I mean,
where'd you get that information from, honestly?
Read it somewhere.
Carry on.
Basically, both points kind of tie together with the Apple and the blue passports, to be fair.
He's playing. He's going bi-topical, people. Going bi-topical. We used to have a sound effect for that. Go on.
I wish I had it still. But basically, I think what it is Apple could release or tell you anything. And I'm quite a sucker for it myself. I'll believe it. I read into it and I really enjoy it. But with the blue passports thing as well, like people, it's just brand loyalty, really. So that's just
a form of brand loyalty. I quite like that, actually. I refuse to contemplate getting an Android because I am an Apple kind of guy. Do you remember when Mitchell and Webb did that thing, didn't they, where it was PC and Apple type? It was almost as if it was a personality trait.
Yeah, same. I wouldn't touch Samsung with a barge pole because I'm ingrained as an Apple fan. I'm a graphic designer.
No, you can't do that because you're now explaining why Apple is better for you. In order to make the Brexit parallel work, you have to refuse to go near a Samsung, even though it is demonstrably 1,000 times better than your Apple.
Exactly, but that's
and cheaper.
You could tell me that. You could tell me, but I would still believe.
Yeah, but I'm actually sitting in front of you with it now, pressing buttons and amazing you with it, and you're still convinced that your clockwork Apple is better than my state-of-the-art space shuttle flavoured Samsung.
Exactly.
You're very clever. You're very clever.
Well, thank you. That's just made my Christmas.
You're very welcome. That's a really clever observation. It is a weird... I suppose you could describe patriotism in a sense as brand loyalty. The bad patriotism, the kind of last refuge of a scoundrel. In my opinion, patriotic people hardly ever use the word patriotic because it's a given. It's a quiet sense of belonging rather than a sort of rabble-rousing sense of disruption. And it doesn't involve feeling in any way superior to other people. It just involves a certain pride in the familiar. But when you describe it like that, you're not going to be able to get anybody to go to war, are you? By describing it like that, by making it feel like just a sort of fairly warm sense of companionship. You're not going to be able to make anybody cross continents to fight a war they don't understand on behalf of a government that's lying to them. So you need to turn patriotism into something else, which is what leads to Brexit. What lovely. I love that idea. Well done. Donald is in Washington, D.C. Mr. President, it's a pleasure to have you on the programme.
Hello, James. I haven't had a good laugh for a while. I'm not in Washington, I'm in Leatherhead.
Oh, sorry. What are you doing there, Mr. President? Did you phone me about Brexit or iPhones?
I've come to open the new embassy.
Leatherhead. That'd be great, wouldn't it? Go on.
No, I phoned you about the iPhones.
Yes.
Because I fix iPhones for a living. And I like the girl that was on earlier who was talking about taking a phone into Apple to get the battery changed, and it was, over 2 years old.
Yes.
And there are a lot of repairs that Apple don't actually authorise or sanction. Like, the charging port in your phone is not an authorised Apple repair. So if you go in with a phone that needs a new charging port, they'll try and sell you a reconditioned phone or whatever. But, these things cost pennies to replace. And the reason they slow down is because of the processor in them. I don't know if you've... Did you say you're an Android person? Or
no, I'm an Apple person.
Oh, I see. So
why'd you say it like that? I'm not like an Apple person, like a sort of weird Doctor Who villain. I'm a human being with an Apple. I don't lie awake at night dreaming of...
Stroking your Apple.
Stop it, Damien. I'm Apple, and it has a sort of...
It has a processor in it, like a computer does. So it is a computer anyway. But and every new phone that comes out, Apple produce a new processor. So they've got, like, for instance, now it's up to what's called the A11 processor.
Right.
But in the old iPhone 5s, etc., it had an A7, and then it went A8. But then they bring out the new iOS, and everybody updates the new iOS and gets loads of new features, etc. Yeah. But it makes the processor, the older processors, work very hard.
And that slows everything down.
And that's why it slows it all down.
You're a genius.
And it uses up more battery, and
that's why. So the weird thing I've had recently was it conks out completely when it's still on 15%. So that sounds like a fault, but it could still be linked. Because was there an update recently?
Well, there's been iOS 11 that's been out for a while, and yes, it's had an update.
I got mine updated overnight. the other day, and I've just realised, talking to you, Donald, or the Donald, as I call you, I've just realised that that's when it started conking out. After I downloaded that operating system. I'm going to give you something that never really happens on Fridays. Look at that.
Very nice.
So what advice have you got for me? Don't bother with the upgrades next time.
Get Samsung.
Yeah, Samsung, but you repair apples for a living. You're like a turkey voting for Christmas, although I suppose that's very 2017. I love this. This is the will of the turkeys, Donald. That's it, the will of the turkeys. So 52% of turkeys voted for Christmas because they were told that they were going to be guests. And then the truth emerged that actually they were going to be dinner, they were going to be lunch, but the will of the turkeys must be respected. All the way to the cranberry sauce. It's two little things I've missed. It's the International Aviation Authority, not the EU, that recommends passport size and colour. So burgundy's always been optional for EU member states, as the Croatian example proves. So, as this rather well-phrased tweet points out, the blue we end up having better be nice for the money it'll cost us. But I missed this. This is from the Immigration Minister, Brandon Wilson. Did you see this? Not Brandon. What's his name? Brandon Lewis. That's the fella, yeah. He said that he knows lots of Remainers who still talk fondly of the blue passport. So with 10 minutes of our time together this year left, if you are, like me, someone who has become increasingly persuaded that the country's embarked upon, well, that we have essentially got 52% of turkeys voting for Christmas and the other 48% being told to shut up and get stuffed. Oh, all right. Wasted on you people, honestly. So Brandon Lewis has said he knows a lot of Remainers who still talk fondly of the blue passport. So if you are a Remainer, would you give me a quick ring? And then before we bid each other Happy Christmas at the end of the show today, we can talk fondly of the blue passport, because that sounds to me like the biggest load of horlicks I think I've ever read. People talk fondly of the blue passport. Can we just do an experiment in talking fondly? But you've got to be a Remainer, because if you're not, you sound a bit mad. 0345 606 0973 is the number that you need. Lewis is in Worcester Park. It's not Brandon Lewis, is it?
It's not, no, it's just Lewis.
All right, Lewis. I know.
Hi, James, first-time caller.
You're very welcome.
Long-time listener.
Well.
Yeah, I just, basically, I can tell you what I think the significance of the blue passports are.
Yes.
It's part of the great Brexit con.
Go on.
It's yet another piece of propaganda to make people think they're really going to get Brexit. And it's a pattern of behaviour going on. So you've got the insistence we're leaving in March 2019, even though nothing's going to change.
Yes.
Theresa May is starting to differentiate between the EU customs union and a customs union.
Yes. The Union of Customs, as it will end up being called.
Right.
We will leave the customs union, but we will join a union of customs, and they shall be completely different things.
Exactly. And, you know, even the things like, I think you've touched on before with Theresa May now saying we're going to have a registration system because we'll have the freedom now to register, even though we've already got that freedom.
Yep.
You know...
So the passport is, and this is where you and I find ourselves a little bit uncomfortable, I suspect, if you're anything like me, because the Occam's razor is what you've applied, the only possible explanation for trying to make a big deal out of something so utterly ridiculous and banal is a belief that these people are so stupid that they'll buy this bone. Throw them that bone. They won't notice the fact that those things we published yesterday were Janet and John level intelligence. But we'll throw them something about the blue passport today. Mugs like me will fall into the trap. We'll get the usual suspects up on the telly, a couple of racist liars on the BBC. It'll all carry on as normal, and they'll all be talking about the blue passport instead of talking about what a dog's dinner we're making of everything. And the people who carry on wanting the dog's dinner are so stupid that they'll get so excited about the blue passport they'll forget for another month that they are essentially punching themselves in the face on a daily basis.
Yeah, I mean, and it could even be part of a bit of a face-saving exercise going on now. You know, it's further proof that we have our country back. You know, you've got the blue passport.
From where? From where? From Brussels.
It's
Strasbourg.
How do you mean?
I don't know. I don't even know what that phrase means. We want our country back.
It doesn't mean anything. It's conceptual. It's this propagandist idea that people have been sold. So if you've been tricked into Brexit from all these pieces of superficial terminology, propaganda, you'll be tricked into thinking you've got Brexit. It's like the Canada plus thing that David Davis goes on about. We know there is no Canada plus. It's Canada or Norway. But the more pluses you add onto it, the closer you get to Norway. My guess is
Norway means freedom of movement. Freedom of movement means tiny little racist heads explode all over the country.
Yeah.
Oh, it could save on fireworks.
It wouldn't surprise me if we get a rebranded freedom of movement. It'll be called something else. We'll claim we have more control now. We'll claim we're outside this, we're outside that. But yet, we have to have regulatory alignment for a Scots-Irish border anyway. So, these things, there's too many contradictions here.
Oh, well, you clearly have your eyes firmly placed in their sockets and your brain firing on at least most cylinders, which puts you in a minority in this country at this point in British history. Would you like to talk fondly? Would you like to talk fondly about blue passports for a minute or two? Oh, hang on, you don't need to. You don't need to, Lewis. I've got Colin in Solihull. Colin, you are a Remainer who can talk fondly about blue passports for a minute or two.
I am indeed, James.
Oh, talk away. Talk away. As fondly as you like, Colin. You're among friends.
Well, if you look at the new passport, the burgundy, they're very insipid and thin and flexible, aren't they?
Yes.
Whereas the old dark blue British passport was made of pasteboard.
Yeah.
And you could slap Johnny Foreigner across the face.
You could give him a right old slap across the chops and he'd know about it. Not with this burgundy thing. He'd barely register any pain at all.
Exactly. It's all this. It's retro. That's what it is.
Retro.
Yeah. We've got rickets back. We've got child poverty and casual racism. And this one, the blue passport, will make the set for Christmas.
It's beautifully put. It's like the selection box of retroactive behaviour, and the blue passport is the cherry on the icing on the manky old cake.
Yep.
Merry Christmas, Colin.
And you, mate.
Lovely stuff. Bez is in... Jonathan is in Hampstead Garden Suburb. Jonathan, what would you like to say?
I just like to say I was a firm Remainer, but I do feel terribly nostalgic about the blue passport.
So are you prepared to talk fondly about it?
I am prepared to talk fondly about it. It was a marvellous object.
Yes.
Substantial to hold that
It had heft. It had heft.
Exactly. Had nice paper.
Yes.
In the days of the old stamps in the passports and everything. Now you've got this horrible sort of plasticky little red thing. That's
what we're going to get. It's just going to be a different colour. We're not going back to
that's a shame. I think we need a proper big thing.
I agree.
Like one that, when you actually open your
I bet we should get an even bigger one. It should be the size of a tablet. And why does it have to be blue? Why can't it be red, white and blue?
I think it should be. You know what? You should have one that effectively you can put an iPad inside. You want the one that big. Then people will give you some respect.
Yeah, they will. And if they don't, you can hurt them with it.
Absolutely.
Have you ever been to do you have any children?
I have 3 children.
How old is the youngest?
13.
Boy or girl?
Girl.
Are you familiar with Squiggle?
Squiggle? I'm not familiar with Squiggle.
You should get yourself down there before Christmas. It's a stationery shop that sells really cool stuff. But what the coolest thing it sells is pencil cases with secret bits. That's what we want. Jonathan,
you know what? I'm going to go down a Squiggle.
You want to get yourself down a Squiggle? It's an ordinary pencil case, but you press a button and a sort of mystery rubber just pings out of nowhere. That's what we need on our passports.
You're right.
Like a transformer.
Right, and you press a button.
Yes.
Yeah, and you press a button, and a ticket pops out.
Yes.
It's around the world ticket.
Or a drone, or maybe a Toblerone.
See, I don't. For me, a Toblerone is like your equivalent socks for Christmas. It is the gift that. You just don't want to receive.
You're joking, aren't you? Toblerone's the king of chocolate.
I'm not. I've lost a lot of respect for you. That's what I've got to tell you.
Frankly, how long have you been listening to the programme?
Obviously, far too long.
I'm surprised you had any left. I have bought.
Yeah,
is my mum listening today? I don't want to spoil the surprise. I bought one of those giant Toblerones. Have you seen them?
I've seen them. You've got they do ones where they put them in like a gold bar box.
No, this is a giant Toblerone. I got it. I bought it in a supermarket in Norfolk for 70 quid, and on eBay and online.
How tall is it,
mate? It's the size of a child.
Oh, so you could hang a coat on it?
Easily hang a coat on it. You could probably live in it once you've eaten the chocolate. It's absolutely enormous. And it's not lots of little bars inside. It's a giant Toblerone. And I paid about £67 for it. And in the paper yesterday, it was 125 quid. I should have bought millions of them. I could have set myself up in a little store.
Listen, you should go on Just a Minute and talk for a minute about Toblerone. I reckon you could do it.
It'll be all right. It's a very big Toblerone. If I had to talk about a small one, I don't know that I could fill a minute.
No. Well, you are, but I can see you are planning to finish the year on Toblerone, aren't you?
I don't know. I'm going to squeeze in one more call, I think, just to make sure that we don't end on a note of happiness and chocolate-flavoured warmth. Merry Christmas, Jonathan.
All right, cheers. Take care.
Mind how you go.
Bye-bye.
But Bez is in Harrow, not the Bez.
James, hello, James, mate. You're very intelligent. You're very, very intelligent. You're very articulate the way you argue your points. Why do you have an issue with people being proud of a blue passport?
I don't have an issue with it. I have a failure to understand it.
Do you understand the royal family? Do you understand Christmas trees? Do you understand pride in taking a day off for a royal wedding?
I understand the pleasure of having a day off work, but pride in a day off?
I understand the pleasure.
But also, let's go back to the Christmas trees. How can you be proud of a Christmas tree?
It gives you a good feeling, gives you utility.
A Christmas tree?
You know?
That's not
Absolutely.
pride.
It looks very pretty, right? So does a blue passport. No? You're silent. Oh, my gosh. I've made James O'Brien silent. My word. You've made my Christmas.
And I think we'll take Bez as a kind of note on which the whole year ends. That kind of amusement, really, while everybody else is thinking Muppet.